for a new home buyer, this is maybe the best episode we've ever put out.
There is the For Your Protection, Get a Home Inspection form for a reason.
What's everyone's general feeling about home inspections?
But wait, that's a great question.
Just be honest, Tim.
So I almost never do them.
But list price is arbitrary. Some listing agents love to price their homes low, so they can look awesome in front of their clients.
Things just changed in 2020. They just did.
This is the Twin Cities Real Estate Investing Show. Real stories, real success in Twin Cities real estate. Join your hosts, Adam Tafel and Tim Swierczek, as they dive into the world of Twin Cities real estate investing.
What's going on, Tim?
Hey, buddy, how you doing?
I'm doing well. We have Alex Marsolais on the pod today, and I would say this episode ended up different than I thought it was going to be in a good way. What do you think?
Yeah, if I was gonna, I would tell you that you probably don't know why you should listen to it until you actually do, because it's really like why should I pay attention to this episode, right? Meaning, like, here's a stat. Why does it matter to real estate, and how is it all intertwined? And so I think it just really gives you a much better picture of real estate and how it works and how to analyze where a market is headed through data and other factors that we're going to talk about, because it's not all data, right? But some of it is, and what you could expect in a very hot market versus a cold market, if you will.
Yeah, so Alex owns one of the biggest transaction coordinating companies in the Twin Cities, which means that she is in the weeds with realtors looking through their contracts every single day. So she has a much better finger to the pulse of the real estate market here locally than anyone else, period. And the reason I said I was surprised, I thought it was gonna be like a market update. I have written here on my sheets, market update, September 2025. There is plenty of that. You'll hear where we're at in the market today as opposed to the last few years. Going back to, we focus a lot on from 2020 till today, the last 5 years. But really, we end up just talking about a lot of important things that home buyers and sellers need to be considering, whether you're an investor or not.
Yeah.
Because she has all of these data points, and then Tim and I kind of riff off of those points and give you guys our 2 cents. So this is a great episode for a new home buyer. This is maybe the best episode we've ever put out.
I think so, yeah. Especially, if you consider it was generic enough that you don't have to be buying an investment. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't have to be your first transaction, because we definitely go into things that are, unique to certain transactions, but hopefully you'll enjoy it.
Yeah. All right. Here's Alex. Welcome to the Twin Cities Real Estate Investing Show, brought to you by Shook. Shook is the all-in-one platform to help you manage your rentals, built for real estate investors just like us. Shook has white glove onboarding. It's really sweet. I'm putting a few of my properties on Shook right now, and I send Oliver the leases and the name of the people involved, and he sets it up, which is really sweet. So at just $5 a unit per month, it's worth checking out shookrentals.com to book a live demo in the show notes. And remember, you can save 20% with our discount, TCREI 20. All right, now on to the main episode. Alex, welcome to the podcast.
Welcome. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
What is a transaction coordinator? Tell the folks at home. This podcast is not focused towards agents so much as it's focused towards investors. So most of them are not going to know what you do. Why don't you explain it?
A transaction coordinator is someone that's hired by a real estate agent on a per transaction basis. So oftentimes realtors get too busy, but not busy enough to the point that they need to hire an in-house assistant. We're oftentimes that stepping stone to get them to that point. So think project manager of the transaction. They're the ones who handle all the communication with lender, title, other agent, sometimes with the buyers and sellers as well, help with dates and deadlines, everything it takes to move the transaction forward, minus negotiations or anything that your realtor would take care of for you.
And the reason why we have you on the podcast today, you hear a lot of real estate data out there. Our listeners hear about closings and median pricing, but there are things that because you are in these contracts, CNN is not going to be able to report on the amount of cancellations, right?
Why they're canceled, because we do see a number, but we don't get any context, right? So,
yeah, and I mean, they probably know like loan types. Yeah. What are some other data points that you are privy to that no one is going to hear unless it comes from you or an agent who's doing a ton of volume?
Yeah. So, of course, the MLS reports on closings. What was the finance type? Was it cash? What was the ultimate sale price? Were there seller pays? And that's where the MLS ends. And that's really as far as public data can go. For our team, I started realizing we have a lot of insights available at the point of final acceptance all the way through closing. And so it's getting those insights to realtors and to their clients 45 to 60 days faster than what's published on the MLS. As I started posting more consistently, agents started asking me for more insights. Things like, are there appraisal gap clauses? Are there escalation clauses? How many cancellations are we seeing? Which is so difficult to measure on the MLS because something goes active contingent and then it goes back to active. And we never understand really what happened there. If you know David Arbit from the Minnesota Association of Realtors, he posts a lot of data insights for realtors. So if you have a realtor and you want data insights, reach out to your realtor. They can get those for you. Through the association, one of the first conversations he and I started having was around cancellations. It's something he's really interested in, that it's hard to get data. And so it's evolved over time, but I try to provide the insights that are meaningful for realtors to provide meaningful insights to their clients.
And just for the folks at home, cancellations would mean there's an accepted offer, there's some sort of contingency, and then somebody backs out after an inspection or backs out after a bad appraisal, something like that. Just want to provide context.
Anything that would cause a buyer or a seller to exit a purchase agreement for any reason after it's fully agreed upon. Both parties have signed.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, go ahead.
Oh, I want to add a little bit more to the context because you said everything I would say, but I kind of want to add a little more so people kind of have a little bit more of a feel. So if we were talking about like, what would you say? Do you know, Adam, what an average realtor does in terms of transactions, and then what maybe a good realtor does, and then maybe like a super agent, like in terms of yearly volume?
Sure. And I think an average agent might sell like 3 to 4 homes a year. A good agent sells
Like
20
to 40.
I sell somewhere in the 30s.
Yeah.
A mega agent probably is 75 to 150, and they have a team.
But those often are either only doing listings, so they don't see the buyer side.
Yeah.
Right. And or they don't ever meet their clients, right? With the exception of, I'll shout out to Artemisa Boston. She meets every single client she works with, and she is like 3rd or 4th in terms of volume in the Twin Cities. But it's fair to say that Chris Lindahl, which I actually respect him, he gets beat on a lot, does not meet 99% of his clients.
Well, and these teams are way too busy to really put together the kind of data you're putting together and care about it. Also, every agent, if you're a good agent, you have some sort of niche. So like I'm selling half multifamily and small commercial. Am I really going to have like a great slice of the market? No, absolutely not.
You don't know Woodbury very well, right? I mean,
come on now. But I
just
got
picked the suburb. Right?
Yeah.
You know? I don't mean to pick on your Woodbury.
No,
knowledge.
it's fine.
I'm just saying like it's not what you do as your main thing.
Yeah. No, there's certain things that are not my main thing. So someone like Alex is really the only source. If you want the most market data, I can't think of anyone else. That's the point you're trying to make.
Yeah, the point I'm trying to make is a really good agent, like a super agent, like the ones you hear about do a few hundred transactions a year. And there might be some that have their name on more than that, but like that have any knowledge of what's going on. It's probably like less than 100 transactions a year, right? And they still have an handle on their business other than just overseeing it. And Alex, how many transactions are you involved in per month, or I'm sorry, per year?
Yeah. This year we'll close a little over 2,000 transactions, and our current agent roster is right around 249, if I recall correctly. Yeah.
So it's somewhere in the ballpark of 20x the people you see on billboards and whatever, much more than that, double that even, of just a really good agent. So you get to see things and you have a bigger picture view of things that we don't see, right? Like you'll see something 20 times before Adam or I run into it once. Right?
Exactly.
I mean, and so I think that I just wanted to kind of get that point really through to the listener so you understand where, the knowledge is coming from.
And then, Tim, I think you're going to be able to articulate this better than me, but so why should our listeners really care about this episode?
Yeah, well, so because I think when they start looking at data and they see things, they're going to be able to interpret it better, right? So the example I would probably give is if we see a change in, we'll talk about cancellations today. They'll have an idea of what that means and also how to interpret it and how big of a deal is it compared to another data point, right? Because I think we'll talk about the relationship to data as well as just like what are you seeing behind the scenes? Because that's the one last thing I think they're going to get out of today is the direction the market appears to be going. And I'm saying it like that because I think it could change, right? But like what path are we on now? And without any correction government wise or other, where are we headed, right?
So all of my insights come from residential single-family properties in the 7-county Twin Cities metro. The counties included are Anoka, Carver, Dakota, Hennepin, Ramsey, Scott, and Washington. Currently, this data set for the month of August 2025 comes from 207 files that fall within that criteria.
And that's up a little bit, right? Because I was seeing 180 in the months previously.
So I post every Friday weekly insights, right? So this last Friday was 183.
Okay.
My team gained 30 new files or whatever it was from over the weekend that still qualified for August numbers. So you all are the first one to hear the August insights.
Sweet.
I know, right? I was like hot and fresh off the press. So we have a total of 113 agents of ours that are included in that 207 files. So 113 unique agents on our end, but a total of 310 agents. So that's a lot of different agents representing those purchase agreements. The reason why I like to point that out is, of course, on every sale, there's a realtor on both sides that has a different approach to how they negotiate the offer. So I like to reference that number because sometimes my pre-MLS sales seem really high to me. And I'm like, gosh.
What do you mean by your pre-MLS?
So sold before it was ever on the market.
Oh.
It was never active. It sold quietly off market, networking, or maybe one of the neighbors bought it, whatever it might be. And so the reason why I like to watch how many agents contributed to these sales is to see, well, do I have one agent that just does a ton of pre-MLS data that's skewing things, or is this pretty representative of the market? So
Okay.
That's why I like to point that out.
What do you think? I'm just trying to rack my brain. More pre-MLS sales, I would think, are not correlated with a strong seller's market because a seller should be listing. The stronger the market, the more the incentive is to list. I could also see, though, when the market gets really crazy, buyer's agents get more crafty, right? And they're looking inside their own brokerage and they're trying to get in before. And, you see homes that don't even go coming soon, that just go pending. So I feel like it could correlate either way. But what do you think?
Yeah. So our average for the last 3 years has been 6% of sales are pre-MLS.
It feels high.
And the other word for that is off market. That's
Off-market.
that's what our listeners probably call it more often, just to kind of
Yeah.
Sure.
So off-market sales. And so I agree with you. I haven't found a trend, and this is where qualitative conversations is really important. Talking with agents, hey, how did those sales come together? What was the reasoning? I don't have a great trend. It's not like, oh, we see it peak in January and then dip down in the spring market. I think oftentimes it's just listening to the seller's needs, wants, desires, and doing the best that you can for that seller. But I tend to agree with you. I think for most sellers, they're going to get their highest dollar when it goes on the market, and it can be competitive. I think that for buyer's agents and people representing people who are looking for investment properties, the more you can network in your office or with other agents in your area or the area that your clients want to be in, the better deals you're going to get. Right.
Yeah. And the strength of the agent. The more off-market deals an agent is putting together, the better the agent, period. I think like volume, just because somebody's doing a high volume as an agent does not mean you're going to get a good representation.
Right.
right.
Yeah. So we actually had a pretty low month here. I think we were at 5%. So a little bit below what we see for average for pre-MLS sales in August. I've seen it go as high as 12%. In the past, it's been sometime, but May of this year was actually peak. That was at 12% pre-MLS sales.
Okay. But hard to.
So was that another 200 type transaction month? So are we talking about 24 sales, or are we talking about more like 12 sales because it was 100 transactions? Just out of curiosity.
She's checking.
Yeah. I mean, Adam, your non-MLS sales kind of come and go, right? As people are, I mean, I think what I see from you, and this could be incorrect. This is my take, is that I see you doing it more when you're having clients having a problem finding houses. It's not really when they're finding houses, you're not like necessarily going to look for non-MLS in the same method or, intensity as you do when things are hot. That's kind of how I see it.
Yeah, I think, well, my non-MLS sales, the longer I'm an agent, the higher that percentage goes,
I've
because
seen it go up,
I've maybe done 5 this year, maybe 5 out of 25 this year. But yeah, I'm not exactly sure what else it correlates with. But what did you find, Alex?
So May of this year, for instance, we had 22 off-market pre-MLS sales out of 190 sales total. So 11.58, I round up to 12%.
Sure.
It's also important to understand that I sold off-market properties for years and never put them in the MLS as a comp sold. So there's all sorts of off-market transactions. In fact, I'm going to be completely guessing, but I bet the percentage of off-market transactions that even get posted to the MLS is like 10%.
It's got to be low.
Because an agent has to be involved, and then the agent has to really care about their numbers, which a lot of agents don't.
So the numbers that I'm reporting are
Your
sales
contracts.
that never go on the MLS.
Oh.
These are not comp solds. These are truly not ever going on the MLS.
But they still had an agent. So here's where our last guest previous to this that's posted right now is Glenn Williams. He buys nearly 100% of his properties off market, very close to it. And he rarely uses an agent on his side. That doesn't mean that there isn't one on the other side. But very frequently, I don't know the exact number, but very frequently, there's no agent at all. And no TC because his team handles it, right? So those are even silent to the rest of us, with the exception that, of course, the county knows. So county data could tell us what their percentage is.
Yeah, there would be a way to scrub the data and find out.
It would be, it's probably not worth it for us to do that right now, but yes, there would be a way.
So to the next stat.
Yeah.
What do we got?
Oh, so, as Alex is looking it up, one thing I'll say is if 6% of the market is non-MLS sales or thereabouts, then it really doesn't make a lot of sense to hold out for that, right? There's plenty of deals. People are finding deals on the market, right? So find the deal where you can find it. Don't pigeonhole yourself like I'm only buying off market or what have you.
And also don't assume that because the deal's off market, it's a good deal. I bet at least 50% of off market deals that hit our inbox they already tried to sell it on the MLS and then it expired and then it failed and then a wholesaler picked it up. Don't you think? It's a really big percentage. So.
And especially if it's coming from a wholesaler, my indication would be going with extreme skepticism and kind of assume the numbers don't work as is and that you might have to negotiate. Because when I look at them, I can just rule out tons of these deals where they're just not that good of a deal.
The true market value of something is really only realized after the market has had a chance to respond to it.
Yeah.
So if I pay $300,000 for an off-market duplex, maybe it would have sat on the market at $300,000. So anyhow, just be skeptical of your off-market deal.
And I'll just give you a little insight too. The very last off-market deal that I started to negotiate, or at least wanted to make an offer on, when I analyzed the comps that the wholesaler sent out, which this is when I've bought 3 or 4 deals from. So this is someone I trust, but their comps, this was a North Minneapolis property, very close, very, very close to where we had our meetup last night, close to the Thomas Avenue one. And this particular property is really close to the Brooklyn Center border. Is that what borders, right? Brooklyn Center, Brooklyn
Park? I believe so. Yeah, definitely close to Brooklyn Park.
Okay, Brooklyn Park then. Well, anyway, 100% of the comps that they chose were not actually in Minneapolis. They have a Minneapolis address because Brooklyn Center and Brooklyn Park say Minneapolis, but they were actually over the border, which increased the comp value. And when you adjusted for that and only selected comps in Minneapolis, it wasn't a deal anymore. It only looked like a deal because they chose comps that were close by, but in a different city.
Yeah. Okay. Well, what's your next stat, Alex?
Yeah, the one that I really like to pay attention to is inspections waived. So for the month of August, we ended with 28% of offers, fully accepted offers, waiving home inspections. That one has been really interesting to watch over the last 4 years that I've been tracking these insights. I had previously mentioned that I have a few reference points from 2021.
Yeah.
So August of 2021, when things were just super crazy because of interest rates being so low, it was at 41% of buyers waiving home inspections.
So
Wow.
close to double what it was,
Yeah.
close to anyway.
Yeah. So 28%, we're doing all right at 28%. Our average is
You're right around, usually close to a third, correct?
a little bit lower than that.
Okay. The months that I pay attention to, it's usually right around between 33 and 30.
Yeah, our average is 25%
Oh, okay.
waiving home inspections over the last 3 years.
Okay.
That feels consistent with the offers I write.
Yeah.
A quarter of them waiving. What's everyone's general feeling about home inspections?
But lately, that's a great question.
Just be honest, Tim.
Okay, so I almost never do them, but I recommend all my clients to do them. And why is that? Because I don't want to be the guy to tell them not to do it and then have a furnace that goes bad. But I've got the contractor connections. You've got the contractor connections. I'm usually also not paying full retail. So part of the deal is I'm getting a price because I'm not inspecting. My big thing, and I think you know this, is I actually feel really strongly that if you're buying in Minneapolis or St. Paul, you should strongly consider getting a sewer inspection, especially Minneapolis. I don't know if St. Paul's quite as bad, but Minneapolis, I've been burned quite a bit by that one. So that's the one I would be willing to do. Although I skipped it on my last one because I thought the price was right, and I knew I couldn't. It was like either take the deal or leave it, but there was no inspection.
I have a conflicting opinion as well. As an agent, just like you said, as an agent, it's really hard for me to be the guy to say, don't inspect this home. What I will tell clients all the time is the odds of the accepted offer on this home having an inspection are just about zero. Because if once you get into 4 offers, the odds that they're going to pick one, and that's correct, and that it tells people what they need to know, and then they can make that decision on their own. I also don't inspect homes that I buy anymore because I've been to hundreds of these inspections, and part of me feels like home inspections, at least in the way we do it in Minnesota, it's kind of this song and dance. It's just kind of silly. Okay, now we walk through the house again. Oh, here's something we're going to pretend we didn't see at the showing when it was completely obvious. Now we're going to ask for $5,000 in closing costs. Oh, you give us $2,500. It's just kind of, I feel like we could skip all of that just as a society, culturally. We could decide to quit doing that. Home inspectors miss things all the time, and a good agent should be almost as good as a home inspector, is my opinion. But what do you think?
Well,
If you have the time to look through it, and it's the summer, right? A lot harder in the winter when you're at night and all that. But yeah.
I'll always lean on there is the for your protection, get a home inspection form for a reason, right? Like clients should be aware of what goes into it, what they're waiving should they decide to not get a home inspection, and all those considerations. I think you two and probably your listeners come with some unique expertise just because of your volume. Like you all are used to going into so many homes, buying so many investment properties. You know the cost of things and the risk that you're taking on. You get familiar with home ownership and investing and that sort of stuff. Whereas if we're looking at traditional first-time home buyers, they've maybe only toured a couple of homes. They don't know what they're looking for, and it's a completely different ballgame. And so our insights, of course, are referencing all the homes that we see, all the homes being purchased, whether it's a first-time home buyer, a move-up buyer, an investor, you name it, right? But I think the who you're working with matters a lot in their decision on whether they want to waive the home inspection. But to your point, if you have a great agent who's sold hundreds of homes, been to hundreds of home inspections, and is familiar with the concept, that's a big value add. Yeah.
I almost might go out on another limb and just say, like, it depends a lot on your budget, right? If you're in a position just where a $3,000 repair would cripple you, you really need a home inspection. You shouldn't even consider buying a house without one. But if you're a move-up buyer who's sold a house that's getting, let's say, a 6-figure payday, putting that down, so your mortgage is a lot lower, and you've got money in the bank because you're just more established and later in your career and your life and your money earning, then it's probably not as big of a deal. And for us as investors, I mean, Adam and I rarely pay full retail. I think I certainly have, right? But like rarely, right? So often I'm getting compensated in one way or another to not get that inspection.
Yeah, I hate to see and also if the house has been on the market for a week, if there's no other competing offers, I would talk out of both sides of my mouth. Like I think the whole song and dance of the reneging the original offer is silly, but I love to be a part of it as a buyer's agent. It's like after the inspection, we are on a mission. How much cheaper can we get this house?
Yeah, and
That's when the
sometimes it's
closing
kind of
cost-
important, right? To the buyer, that is. Like
Yeah.
they need the closing costs, but they couldn't get them initially, right?
Yeah, definitely. But and then I hate to see also like, it's a first time home buyer couple. They're nervous. They're not going to be completely broke. So they're not the type of person you described.
Yeah.
There's multiple offers on what would be the perfect dream cream puff home for them. And you can tell it's been owner occupied for 25 years. It's immaculate. We've all been in hundreds of these homes,
absolutely, yeah.
but they just don't feel comfortable not inspecting. And I guess like if I was their friend, if I'm talking to my little sister and she's in this situation, don't inspect it. Absolutely do not, because it's like, do you want to buy the house or do you want to not buy the house?
Yeah, that brings up a good point. So when people go into inspections, what I like to kind of give them is you have to have context on an inspection, right? So the one I always use because it's silly is the backflow preventer. No, so first of all, I'll say no house meets code unless it's less than 4 years old, because code changes every roughly 4 years, right? So if you got a 5-year-old house, you're already out of code, okay? But as it gets inspected, nearly every house in Minnesota does not meet the backflow preventer code, because it's just like you have to have had a sale that required it for that to even come up. And anyway, so this is a silly thing. If you were in a neighborhood and there were 400 homes in this neighborhood, probably 6% of them have this backflow preventer fixed. The rest of them don't. Doesn't make them unsafe. The people are not staying up in the middle of the night worrying about living in their home. It's a completely safe home. It just so happens that it doesn't meet code anymore. So you have to go into your inspector and say, if you looked at 100 homes in this neighborhood, how many of them would have this problem? Because that gives you an idea, right? Of, if I make 100 offers, 93% of them are going to have this problem. So am I okay with that? And then follow-up question is it expensive to fix? And is it dangerous or important to fix for any real reason, right? And if you can kind of get comfortable with that, then it's like, this is not a big deal. I bought my first house in 99. And when I sold, I found my inspection report. And I did none of the inspection stuff for the first 5 years. And I was there over 19 years. And I did less than half of the inspector's items over a 19-year period.
So
and
they didn't fail.
Many of them were well over 12 years.
Yeah.
It's
home inspections are there to help educate you and just like make you more familiar with that particular property, right? It's not necessarily to help you make the decision, should you buy this house, yes or no. It's all the other factors that you talked about. Are you willing to take on that risk of that potential item? Do you have the cost to cover that item should you purchase this home? And just listening to what you're talking about, it's like, oh my gosh, there's so much. And from a home seller's perspective, it could be frustrating to accept an offer that has a home inspection on it, right? And that's why if you're an investor and someone who's very familiar with the properties, waiving that home inspection, you might be much more quick to do than someone if is writing an offer and it's a traditional buyer.
Yeah. So to put a little perspective on it, however, I did have a deal that went south recently because of inspection. They had an inspection done and they found out that there was a problem with the roof and it was leaking water onto the wood joists of the attic, such that there were mushrooms growing in the attic on the wood.
Well, what kind of mushrooms were they?
This is absolutely something a realtor could see, right? So it wouldn't require an inspector, but it would require someone to go to the attic and take a peek. And I tell you what, I'm going to raise my hand and be the first to say, unless it's a walk-up attic, I've never been in an attic of any house I've ever sold. I don't even look in them unless it's a walk-up attic, right? Then I've been in them.
Sure.
What
is any other final thoughts on home inspections? I think you're right. It's a great educational. If you get a 3-hour tour with an expert who's going to give you a 3-hour education on the home, which I think is very valuable for a new homeowner. Also, make sure that the inspector you hire inspects this type of home. How many times have we seen we're selling a late 1800s Northeast duplex and then somebody's dad is like the Maplewood Tish inspector and comes in to inspect it, because you need the context. Like you just put up, the inspector needs to be an expert in that asset type, or else it's going to be a SHIT show.
Absolutely.
So moving on.
So to recap on that, the move on is if you see the TC report and it shows inspections at 40% or higher, waived 40% or higher, it's a very hot market, right? Yeah. And you're probably going to see other things too, which we'll talk about. If you see them in the 20s, then it's not a very hot market, right?
Exactly.
And there's probably diminishing correlation there. Where like, because certain buyers are just never going to inspect. So even if we're in like a heavy buyer's market, or I guess if they get really, really low, God, what am I trying to say? Help me out here. It's not going to correlate all the way down.
Not all the way down.
Not all the way down. Because some people will inspect regardless of how tight the market is, right? Or waive. Yeah. So.
Exactly.
Yeah. Because I mean, even in, May of this year, let me get back to that.
Yeah, in baseball, they say that every team wins 60 games a year and every team loses 60 games a year. So you can throw 120 games out. It's the other 60 games that matter. Right? Yeah. And so that's kind of what you're saying. Some people on either end of the spectrum are going to either waive or not waive, no matter what. Yep. So it's really that middle, what are we talking about? We're talking about the difference between 20 or 45 and 25. Yeah. Right? Or something like that.
Yeah. So this year, even in the height of the spring market, which for us is between, Super Bowl Sunday is kind of the kickoff to the spring market. So that's when things start to pick up.
That's an interesting thing to know.
Yeah. Always. It's one of our busiest days for offer rating ever. Like it's a busy day. So in March, we had 25% waiving inspections. April, we had 26%. May, we had 26%. So we didn't see that big peak this year that we oftentimes see where it's like, okay, now we're seeing 30-40% of buyers waiving inspections. It's been pretty consistent this year. It has not gotten super competitive like what we've seen in years past.
So how to use this episode? If you see interest rates go down and this number go up, then, that's a very good indication of what's going on in the market, right? So these are how we're going to put things together to see trends. Okay.
Yeah. Now, when it comes to the different finance modes that we're seeing, actually very consistently in August in 2025, 2024, 2023, 17% cash purchases, all 3 years. That's what we're seeing for the month of August. Very, very consistent. Conventional was 71% for this year, FHA 7%, and VA 4%. And that's actually been really consistent the last 3 years. So 17% of people purchasing with cash, 71% with conventional, FHA 7, DVA 4%. That's a lot better for FHA and VA buyers than what we've had in the previous months. There was a couple of months this year where VA was like 1%. Like it was rough out there for the VA buyers. Our best months historically for cash buyers are the end of the year. December, like November or January timeframe tends to be where we see the most amount of cash offers. And I think that's largely like the 1031 exchanges and just trying to get the dollars invested before the end of the year.
Good point. Does it carry over into January then? Do you see like
a couple of closings? Yeah. I think that those are like accidental, like we weren't trying. Yeah, but it does carry over a little bit.
The bias against the VA loan is just so like awful about our society, like, come on. Like if anyone should be, if we're going to give anyone a break, how about we give a vet a break?
Yeah, for sure. And like Minnesota just doesn't have a lot of VA loans because we don't have a VA presence in the way other states do, meaning we don't have a big base, right? We've got Fort Snelling, but that is a very low volume and we have a lot of reservists here in Minnesota, but if they're active, they're probably in like a Carolina or a Georgia or something like that, right? And or even like I forget which Dakota has the Air Force base, but you're going to see that. Is it South Dakota? But anyway, you'll see different states that have more VA loans than we do.
Yeah, that's a good point. It doesn't necessarily mean all these listing agents and sellers are poo-pooing the VA loan.
It doesn't, although I see that. You're right. I mean, there is definitely a bias against them, and it's unfortunate because it's mostly, I would say it's almost all just misunderstanding and myths. There is some amount of truth that it's harder to manage the VA appraisal because of the way the VA sets it up and how we order it.
Takes forever.
Yeah, it can. And that part is annoying to me as a lender, but it's a small price to pay, and we can get the transaction done. It's not like we can't do them.
So my team is unique where we help agents draft offers. So I don't post those insights. However, I can say that it is much more difficult for FHA and VA buyers to get their offers accepted. They're having to write a lot more. If you can go conventional, at least to get the offer accepted and then possibly switch financing types during the transaction process, at closing, after closing, you are far more likely to get your offer accepted if you can be conventional.
And we've done that. Sometimes we've had Adam make offers where he'll go to the sellers and say, hey, look, we qualify for conventional, we can prove it, and we'll write an offer and close that way if needed. But we prefer FHA for certain reasons. So we'd like to be able to write, to pursue FHA financing, but we'll guarantee we'll close conventional if we need to.
Yeah, unfortunately for all you out there who have to use FHA loans in a busy Minnesota spring market, it is not happening for you. I mean, most of those folks will fall in love with homes between 5 and 10 times, and then in July they end up getting one. And while that's just because the market's slowed down, it is really frustrating.
Yeah, I think just knowing if you're going to be an FHA or a VA buyer, you're much more likely to get your offer accepted sometime between like October and February. If you can be writing in those winter months, I know it's not ideal. I know that can be a very difficult time to move, and oftentimes those are going to be your first-time home buyers. But if you want your best at bat and you want to write as few offers as possible and have as little competition as possible, those are going to be your best months.
And ultimately have the best chance at buying the home that's best for you, which is the point of all of this, right?
Well, and we talk about this every year. You're going to get an episode, by the way, where we talk about how great it is to buy in the winter. And there's actually a lot of truth to that, right? Your only downside to buying, well, two downsides to buying in the winter. One of them we all know is it sucks to move in the winter, but okay. And the other one is that you have less inventory available, but you have so much less competition that there's a lot of other benefits.
Totally. All right, what's the next stat?
One of the things that I think would really resonate with the audience is our average purchase to list price. So this is for homes that are on the MLS. We're looking at the last list price, not the original, but the current or the last when the offer is accepted compared to the purchase price. Right now, we're at 100.5% average purchase to list. So
that sounds really high to me. Is that higher than normal?
That's actually a little lower than where we've been this year. Okay. If we're comparing to the last two August, so 2024, we were at 101.1, and 2023, we were at 100.8. So we're a little bit lower than where we historically have been in August. Now, if we want to compare to 2021, we were at 102.5. So again, much more competitive back in 2021. No surprise, but just validating what we kind of already know.
Have you ever tried to go back to the original list price, or is that just too difficult to run?
I haven't, just because it's time consuming.
Yeah. Because you're just typing it in as you go, right? You're having
Exactly.
someone look at a listing, what was the list price, right? And you've got a database that you put these in, some sort of CRM.
Yeah. So it's interesting because these are all byproducts of, we have to collect these data points anyways to manage the transaction. So this just happened to be a byproduct of what we're creating, which is the transaction management of it all. And I was running these insights for a year before I started posting them publicly to agents. You'll see back in 2021, if you scroll back that far, there were a few things here and there that I was posting as far as our insights go. I didn't start getting consistent until 2022. And it was because I realized how much value was here in the data we were just naturally gathering.
Okay.
Going back to our average purchase to list price, in September, October, November, December, and January of this year. So through September 2024 through January of this year, our average purchase to list price was below 100%. So that's where the deals were being had. If you
Going
want
right back to what we were just talking about.
Exactly, yeah. So if you want to buy a home for a good deal and get possibly seller paid closing costs, no surprise, September through January is kind of the time frame to do it.
And it already picks up what does February look like?
Let's see. February, we were at 100.6. Like I said.
So it went back up to where it is about now.
Yeah.
Now, can you look at the last couple of years and or should we do that later?
Sounds fine to me. Yeah. I mean, I've said this a million times, but list price is arbitrary. Some listing agents love to price their homes low, so they can look awesome in front of their clients, or maybe a less cynical observation would be that you really can't underlist a home.
Yeah.
But you certainly can overlist it. So you're working with your agent. You need a CMA when you offer. You need to look at the comps. And almost the best thing you can do as a new home buyer, looking at, oh my gosh, honey, what should we offer, is forget about list price. Put it out of your head. Focus on your monthly budget. And then look at the CMA, which is a little appraisal that your agent put together for you. Because you can get a great deal and pay way over list price. You can get an awful deal and pay under list price. People list homes all over the place.
Yeah.
So 2024, our insights were actually pretty much the same, where September, October, November, December, and then January were all below 100%.
What year was that? That was
2024 to January of 2025,
okay.
right? And then as soon as we hit February, it went above 100%. So to your point, I don't necessarily use the average purchase to list price, and I also track the median purchase to list price. I don't use them so much to say like, oh, if you write $1,000 above list or 0.5% above list, you're going to get your offer accepted, because there's so many things that go into it. Home prices naturally go up. Realtors' ability to price a home appropriately, how many price reductions they had to do. There's so many factors that go into it. I use it more as an indicator. How hot is the market? How competitive is it?
Because if you do it over 200 transactions, you're going to even out some of those oddball people.
Exactly. And so I find one of the more boring statistics that I publish being the median purchase to list price. The reason why I do it is because as soon as we see that median go up or go down, that's telling me something significant is happening, because the vast
It doesn't move much.
It doesn't move much. And so when it does, something is going on. We're seeing a lot more traction either going up or going down. So that's a good indicator that oftentimes gets overlooked.
What's it look like lately? Let's look at that trend.
It's been at 100% pretty much for, a while.
I mean, a hot market in Minnesota, you can expect as a buyer to be, for the winning offers, to be maybe 10% over list is pretty standard. So like a beautiful Craftsman in Highland Park that's listed at $475 is probably going to go 50 grand over asking.
Yeah, 525 plus maybe a couple bucks just to be the winner.
Exactly. Yeah. And then, so yeah, that's kind of the problem with averages when you look at data in general, and why medians are more. But again, like what percentage are these cream puff homes of the greater market? Maybe like 2%, which is kind of my world. So
yeah.
Yeah. So it's been at 100% every single week since May of this year. So again, it's just a good indicator. And this year has not been, we haven't seen the peaks and valleys that we've seen in years like 2021, 2020, and even in 2022 a little bit, when we started to see the rates increase and things getting less competitive. We were seeing sellers making a lot more concessions those days. So there's been times where we see the median go below 100, of course, and times that we see it go above, but it hasn't been above.
Like what's the extremes? Like what are we talking for low and high?
Gosh,
points?
I mean, for this year, our highest was 100.4% as far as the median goes. We haven't seen too much below since probably January of this year.
do your sales like skew towards any particular location, demographic? Is there anything about your agents? I mean, just trying to think, like an agent working with a TC is going to be busier, right? Are there any other things about your data that maybe make it a little bit not exactly a perfect slice of the greater market?
Well, it's not, I mean, of course we don't support all agents here in the Twin Cities. And so it's not a perfect slice of the MLS. And I never want to claim it to be. I call it market insights instead of data for a reason. It is data, and don't get me wrong. It's a good snapshot of what's going on, but I'm only taking a picture of this corner of the room, and there's this entire room and all these events going on, but you're just seeing this tiny little sliver of the pie, if you will. So that's why I include these insights for August of 2025 come from 113 agents. I didn't go through and count how many brokers. We support over 30 brokerages here in the Twin Cities. They're all in the 7-county metro. I pull out the land and the commercial and the multifamilies. These are all single family properties or anything less than 4 units that qualify single family on the MLS, right?
Well, we want that commercial and multifamily data, don't we? So you should start sending that to us. Yeah,
well, and you don't break out duplex through fourplex at all, do you?
I
or do you have the ability to in your database?
Oh, you take it out of the numbers completely? Mm-hmm. Why do you do that?
So,
wait, I thought you said 1 through 4 is
1 through
included.
4 qualifies as single family on the MLS. So those stay in. But anything that's commercial, so 5 or more units, falls underneath commercial. I pull
on the
that
MLS,
out.
it'd be multifamily, 2 to 4. Yes.
Yes. Yeah. Those stay in. But the commercial ones get pulled out.
No, that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's a different world.
Yeah.
I guess what I was asking with my question is like maybe you got your start as a TC in like the northwest suburbs and an Edina Realty, and so you happen to sell a lot over there.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Our agents are all over in the 7-county metro, and I also pull out the insights that don't fall within that area. And of course, like our Wisconsin sales, those aren't squeezing into there. I think we've got a pretty good representation. We have agents down in the North Loop. We've got agents in Minneapolis and the surrounding areas. I've got plenty down in Scott County since that's closer to where I live. And plenty in the east side of the cities as well. It's not market wide, but I do think it is pretty representative of what's going on.
Cool.
All right, what's the next data?
Yeah, what do we got?
Seller paid closing costs. Currently, 32% of buyers are negotiating for seller paid closing costs.
Oh, that's what. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking was a third. That's almost always a third, right?
Almost always. It's been pretty consistent. The last 2 years, in 2024, it was at 37%, and in 2023, it was at 36%, but right around a third for the vast majority of the time. That's gone up significantly over the last 5 to 6 years. I used to see it a lot less before 2020, and after COVID happened, we saw a bigger increase in seller paid closing costs and how many people were negotiating for it. In 2021, it was just at 25% because of how competitive 2021 is or was.
That still feels really high for a super hot market. Mm-hmm. The fact that so many sellers, it's so silly. Not so many. There's a type of seller who thinks, well, I shouldn't have to do that, even though maybe the net is the total same. Like, sir, we're just rolling it into the mortgage. We could call it a buyer finance closing cost if that would make you feel better.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's what it is.
That's what it is. They're paying for the house. That money comes from them, and then it goes to the closing costs. So it's buyer financed. But I think there's a lot of sellers who are under the impression that like unless something's wrong, they shouldn't have to. So 25 feels remarkable for a crazy hot market.
Yeah.
Some transactions just needed that to go through, right? And I think it probably similar. Like there are in any market, even a hot market, there are houses that are, let's say they're still hot because the market's hot, but they need something to push them over the edge because they're in subpar condition for that market and that kind of thing. The reality is a lot of first-time home buyers can come up with the down payment, but they don't have the down payment plus the full closing costs. Because very often nowadays, with insurance being where it's at and other fees and everything's went up, the typical 3% almost never covers the full closing costs. It has to be a pretty highly priced home for that to work, right? But if you're in a lower price market, a 2 to 350,000 is probably the area where 3% doesn't cover it. And somewhere in that 350 range, then you're probably getting 3% enough to cover the full amount.
One thing that I was really paying attention to last August when the NAR settlement was happening and the commission structures were changing, and now we're writing the commission onto the purchase agreement potentially, I thought that would make seller paid closing costs subject to change. We really haven't seen too much for changes since that change occurred, which has been really interesting. One of the insights that I do keep track of that I only post at the end of the month, and I don't post all the data that I'm pulling, are the commission changes. In short, not much has changed. It's been pretty consistent with how often we're negotiating for buyer paid commission, how it's being paid, how much is being paid, whether the buyer is making any contributions. But I really did think that with the NAR settlement, we were going to see some increases in the average seller paid closing costs to help cover everything like you were talking about. It's interesting because we haven't seen it.
What are you seeing with agent commissions? Because that's not on your normal insight. While you're looking that up, I mean, the fallout from the NAR settlement was like the biggest nothing burger of all time, you guys. There were CNN headlines every other week was like, forget about the way we sell homes because it's all about to change, and realtors are going to be maybe we're not even going to have realtors anymore. And I can tell you that before the settlement, I had only had one buyer pay my commission directly. And after the settlement, I've still only had one buyer pay my commission directly. And the buyer who did, it was a contract for deed deal with 0% down.
Yeah.
So that's not to say that it won't happen again, but
Yeah, it's really interesting. I thought the same as you. I thought the sky was falling and that there was going to be all these changes to how commission was handled here in Minnesota, and we just haven't seen it.
I think the big reasons is sellers actually understood that it's important they do, because there is, again, it can be included in the price. There's a pot of money there that's generated and essentially gets financed. But if they make the buyer pay it, then they reduce their buyer pool, because then you need to have someone who has the full amount of the purchase price, the full amount of the closing costs, and the full amount of the realtor commission. And those people are pretty rare. And guess what? If they have that, they have a lot of leverage to offer a really low price.
And maybe
So,
we should...
so...
Well, yeah, and let's just explain to the folks at home who don't understand, like, for as long as homes were sold in my lifetime, your lifetime,
Yep.
A listing agent makes a deal with a seller. They say, I'm going to charge you 6%, maybe 5%, maybe 4%, maybe 7%, and then I'm going to chop this with a potential buyer's agent. That amount that they were going to share in Minnesota happened to usually be 2.7, and that was marketed. So the only thing that the NAR settlement did, well, two things. It made it not legal for anyone who is in the realtor, who's a licensed realtor, to market a blanket buyer broker compensation. So if I look at any listing here, it no longer says 2.7%. I have to write it into the contract. And then the second change was I can't show a house to someone without some sort of agreement signed. That's it. That's all that changed. So
Agreement to how much you're going to charge them if they buy it, correct? Is that what you mean?
Say it again.
The agreement, you can't show a house unless you have an agreement to how much you would charge them if they buy it. Is that how that?
No,
what does
just
the agreement have to say? I guess.
I have a few different agreements. I have my standard exclusive buyer rep agreement for when someone is ready to hire me as their agent.
Yep.
But if I'm meeting someone for the first time at a house, the last thing I want to do is put an exclusive agreement in front of their face. So my boss, actually, I can't take credit for this. My boss came up with just a touring packet agreement that basically says, I am offering a touring service. I'm not representing you. I'm not charging you any money. If you want to, after I show you some of my realtor skills, you can hire me. So, I've yet to have anyone sign that and like take advantage of me afterwards. I'm completely comfortable with it. But no, I don't know exactly how the settlement was written, but I think it probably just says that we need a written agreement before a tour.
Okay.
So you're absolutely right. And the reality is, for those of us who have been in real estate here in Minnesota, nothing really changed because our forms were written correctly. It's how business should have always been practiced, where there should be some sort of agreement before you show a home to a potential client. There should be some sort of agreement about how much you're being paid and how you're being compensated. And that's always supposed to have been disclosed. It just is now our feet are being held to the fire here in Minnesota. Whereas in other states, there was no buyer rep agreement ever. That's like ever existed. There was nothing in place. And so for those states, there was some significant changes. Here in Minnesota, not so much. And since we've seen it roll out, right now we're only seeing 5% of buyers paying any dollars towards their agent's commission. And that's been historically pretty true since August of last year when these changes rolled out. So that's paying at least $1, but not necessarily paying the entire buyer's agent commission. The biggest change that we saw was it's now included on the purchase agreement, and that's currently 87% of all offers have the agent's commission on the purchase agreement instead of the behind the scenes, the listing broker and the buyer broker negotiate, and it's never like really fully disclosed exactly how much they're coming to an agreement on.
Isn't that against the rules to not disclose that to the buyer? Do you need a compensation form?
It's always been disclosed, but like instead of using the cooperating broker agreement, which is an agreement signed by both realtors, it's on the purchase agreement, which is an agreement signed by the buyer and the seller.
Sure. No, obviously I understand that. I guess I'm saying there's a compensation disclosure that should be given to every buyer who's signing a PA.
Yes.
Oh, but that's not necessarily part of the offer package because you don't send. Okay, I get it now. I get it. What are we seeing for what are buyers agents being paid? Do you have that data?
Yeah.
Come on now.
I do. I'm hesitant to say because I don't want to get into price fixing. I will say.
Oh, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's not have that discussion.
Yeah.
That's good call. Way to rein me in there. I'm the one who'd be in trouble in this room. So thank you.
You're the one with the real estate license.
But I can tell you the irony of the change in Minnesota.
Do you have to have a license to be a TC?
No.
Okay.
The irony of the change in Minnesota is that I know lots of agents who are making more money rather than less post change because now they are in control of their income.
I will agree with that statement. I know a lot of realtors who are making more money now because they are in control of their income and everything's negotiable now. And agents are expert negotiators, even when it comes to their commission. And we've seen plenty of agents start making more. It's interesting because like the agents who oftentimes would waive their commission to get the deal done, they're making less now. But the agents who always have stood firm on their commission and how much they want to be getting paid are earning the same, if not more, as before.
I remember the first deal I did in August of 2024. It was one of those where they said, well, we only want to pay X amount, and my buyers were under contract to pay me a little bit more. And I'm kind of in the middle of it. And it was just such an awkward, I feel like anytime as a professional, if you're talking about your commission, you're doing something wrong with your client. And so I really made that decision that month. No more back and forth decision making, because if I decide I'm going to be flexible on my commission on the agent, it's almost like I'm making a judgment call with everyone I work with. Like,
are these people
Tim
worth it? Yeah.
Well, Tim's one of my best friends and he's my lender. So I'm only going to work for Tim for this percent. And then my mom gets this. And then you're somewhere in between Tim and my mom. And it's just like, ugh, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
One really interesting and important thing that did come from all these changes is I know a lot of agents who sold a very high volume of real estate and poorly interpreted the new contract changes, who were negotiating for more commission than what the seller had agreed to pay out, accidentally got the offer accepted, didn't properly disclose, hey, seller, you're paying out this buyer's agent, 2.7 when on the listing rep we had talked about 2%, going back to the seller and saying, hey, I'm not going to reduce what you're paying me too. You're going to have to pay above what we had negotiated on the listing rep. We saw a lot of that, and we still see it sometimes too. So having a great realtor who understands the agreements and how to practice real estate here in Minnesota is just as vital as ever, but maybe a little bit more important now, because when we're talking 1%, 2%, 3% of the sale price, that adds up pretty quickly.
Okay, so next data point. What do we got, Alex?
Next data point, home warranties. This is the one that I see at the beginning of the month. It's lower and it increases as we get through the month. I know.
What's up with that?
So the reason why is because when I'm posting my weekly insights, I post from the first of the month through the Friday that I'm reporting. So you're getting the entire month's data every Friday. And at the end of the month, I do, here's what we saw for the entire month. The reason why I do it that way is because things do change as we get under contract. I like to get all the insights from after the inspection time frame. Like, what are the final points that we negotiate? And that's why
because they change after, yeah.
Exactly.
So you get more seller paid closing costs, you get more warranties after inspection than you get prior.
But it's interesting because seller pays, we don't see the big increase at the end of the month like we do with home warranties. So usually at the beginning of the month, it's between 4 to 8%. And as we get to the end of the month, it's usually closer to 9 to 12%. And so we see that increase because, okay, we had the home inspection, what would make the client feel more comfortable. Oftentimes a home warranty is an answer to that. But we do see seller pays being added. We do see price reductions. Not as much as we see home warranties, though. It doesn't skew the insights like what we see with home warranties.
I think that home warranties are driven nearly 100% by realtors. I don't think buyers bring it up. I don't think, how many times do you have buyers call you and say, we want to buy a house, but can we get a warranty on it? I mean,
I've never heard that.
Yeah.
What?
and you'll see it often with listing agents are really the ones driving it, right? They're saying, I've had this pitch before. There was a realtor. He used to go by like the bike realtor, and he's a Northeast Minneapolis realtor. Was on a bus bench. First name was Mark, but I can't remember his last name.
The bike realtor?
He considered himself the bike realtor. He rode his bike to the listing, right? And his big thing was every single house he lists is covered by a warranty.
Mm-hmm.
Like he wouldn't list your house. He doesn't pay for it. It's not part of his commission, but you're required to do it if you list with him, right? So he was driving that market and he felt better. He probably felt he was going to get sued less or whatever else and just smooth things over, which is fine. Like it's what he decided to do. But I see some realtors promote them and then you get them and then everyone else doesn't. And then it usually comes up because someone offered $8,000 in closing costs. We only needed 6. There's 2 left over. How do we do it? Oh, well, we'll just get you a warranty and I'll cover all your appliances for whatever, 2 years or whatever it is.
When I had my Keller Williams team, we included a home warranty with every listing and we paid for it. Okay. It also gives the seller peace of mind while you're on the market. The home is covered. It's covered while it's pending. So if you're going to do a home warranty, do it as early in the process as possible.
And you guys paid for it. That's different, right? Yeah.
Well, and it's like, gosh, I want to say a year home warranty on an average size single family home, a basic one at that time was maybe $500. And then on a bigger home, it probably topped out at $750. So on a 3% commission, it's really not that big of a deal. It's a great sales pitch for an agent to say, hey, peace of mind. If you guys you're out of state, well, if anything breaks, this warranty will cover it.
It's certainly a good way you could get over some of the fears of a house inspection, right? Like we were talking earlier. It doesn't cover like a bad foundation, right? And I don't know, do they cover leaky roofs?
There are add-ons. I want to say that a home warranty, certain ones would cover a bad foundation. I believe
or a bad roof.
A bad roof, you got to add a roof leak rider to that. We use a company called American Home Shield.
Yeah. Okay. Yep.
And they're probably one of the ones with the better reputations. You have to add extra for like air conditioning. Air conditioners are a big one. The pre-2011 ACs that use that R22 stuff.
Sure.
So if you're buying a house with a pre-2011 air conditioner, it's a good idea to get a home warranty and make sure you've checked that rider. But yeah, in general, I like home warranties because it gives people peace of mind. And I bet that the reason why home warranties exist, they wouldn't exist if there wasn't a very small percentage of them that even get used, right? Because as home buyers think they're going to buy something and then everything's just going to crash down on them. And that's not at all what happens when you buy a home. But I have seen American Home Shield actually pay out. But I'm still not even though they're my favorite home warranty company, it's not like they get my 100% stamp of approval.
Yeah.
Sure.
What do you think?
So I think that this is one of those, if you're a first-time home buyer or a residential buyer purchasing a home, it can be a good peace of mind tool, right? And it's no different than choosing a realtor who's great, choosing a lender who's great, choosing a home warranty with a rep who's great and going to be responsive to you should you need it is really the most valuable thing. And even you being able to explain, well, adding a roof is an add-on, right? Or not all warranties are created equally. And so having a great home warranty rep who, when you need to use it, is responsive and does go to bat for you to make sure you are taken care of is really what makes all the difference, right? I've heard plenty of stories of, how often home buyers close, they get into the property, and then the next week later, the dishwasher fails or the refrigerator in the garage burns out or whatever it might be. So in those situations where this is their one and only home and they maybe don't have the dollars to cover some larger expenses, that's when the home warranties really come into
especially for the first couple years, right? Yeah. Depending on how it is. Because what do they allow up to 3 years? What do they do?
2. Most of them are up to 2. It's really hard to get more than 1 year on multifamily. It's harder now to get one on a 4-plex, but you can do them with duplexes, but I believe they cap them at 1 year. But that you're spot on with the rep. So I have Tammy with American Home Shield. Maybe you know her. She's super responsive. Anytime I have a client who's a little skeptical of the home warranty, I just put her on an email with Tammy because I'm not the expert. Tammy is. Yeah, so
exactly.
And yeah, if you don't have a human, if it's just some, oh my gosh, we all have horror stories with third-party warranties probably from your refrigerator comes with one and then it's just this faceless corporation in the Cayman Islands. So yeah. American Home Shield has Tammy.
Yeah, choosing one that is good and responsive. If you don't, it's just another chore. It's just another thing. Like your refrigerator's not working and now you can't get anyone to help you with it.
Right. And so another thing about warranties in general is their insurance. And whether we're talking about a home warranty or we're talking about home insurance, one thing I'd like to point out as someone who used to be a licensed insurance agent is that if they're charging extra for something, that's a clue. Like a good example I'll give is they charge extra for sewer backups. Why? Because they actually happen. I'm talking in insurance, right?
Ooh,
They actually happen. So you actually might want to consider, depending on how furnished your basement is, upgrading that coverage if if you have a finished basement, because your likelihood of having that actually happen to you is much greater than having a roof fall on your house or someone break into your house and steal your wedding ring or something like that.
Interesting. That's a good point. The next one that we track are sale of buyer's property contingencies. So the buyer has to sell the property in order to purchase their new property. Currently, it's at 11% of all fully signed PAs are including sale of buyer's property contingency, and that's historically pretty accurate. Usually, we see that somewhere between 10 to 13%. Sometimes when things are a little bit more competitive, we'll see it go down to say 7 or 8%. So it is pretty much in line with what we would typically see for sale of buyer's property contingency.
So it doesn't fluctuate much with the market. Although you would think that a market that is more in favor of buyers is going to have a higher percentage of these contingencies, because in a crazy hot market where homes are flying off in one day, ain't nobody with that contingency getting accepted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We almost always try to get people approved so that they don't need that contingency, right? Like that is a last resort if you need to be approved to sell your home, and then it is what it is.
Yeah, I'm looking at the insights from earlier this year, and again, we typically see it somewhere between 9 and 13%. In June, we did get up to 14%. I mean, that still is, those offers were written in May, and they were getting their offer accepted. I think that just being strategic with how you're writing the offer. The other thing that goes well is on the purchase agreement, there's 2 different ways that you can write in sale buyer's property contingency. The first one is this is not currently pending on the MLS. So pending being the only contingency remaining is financing. So there's someone already locked in to buy that home. Those agreements are usually pretty solid. Sellers are usually pretty quick to accept those. Anything that's not pending on the MLS, sellers might be more hesitant to accept, and it is going to be contingent, and the sellers can call that contingency due at any time, and you have so many days to be able to remove the contingency. And how you do that is you have to get that listing, the buyer's property, again, pending on the MLS. That's the only option.
Do you don't track if they're pending contingencies or non-pending?
No. There's lots of small insights, things like that, or breaking it down into price point, breaking it down into neighborhood, or the pre-MLS sales. There are so many different ways that I could break down this data. And unfortunately, this is something that I do because I do really love it and enjoy it. And I wish that I had the ability to go through and mine and get very specific. And right now, as a one-woman show who has the technology that she has, no, unfortunately.
Do you handle all the transactions? You don't have a team?
I do have a team. So there are 14 of us that handle the transactions.
Okay.
Yeah, but when it comes to the data and insights, I'm a one-woman show.
Got it.
I was also I'm like, wait, what? You're doing all
I'm
this
just closing.
Yeah.
I'm
like, there are deals blowing up right now. People are going to be crying next week because we're recording this podcast today.
I know. How many deals in Minnesota fell apart because Alex was in a podcast? Yeah.
All right. What's next?
The next 2 I find very interesting, which are the different clauses that we commonly see. So escalation clauses. Right now, we're only seeing them on 5% of all fully signed PAs. So that's the buyer will pay X dollars more than the highest offer above, up to, not to exceed dollar amount, right? 5%, which is a little on the low end. The last few years in 2024, we were at 8%, and in 2023, we were at 7%. We're just not seeing them as much. Listing agents don't tend to enjoy them. Sellers don't tend to enjoy them. So
Do you have a peek?
Let me look.
Notice how sellers don't enjoy them, because what they want you to do is just arbitrarily pick the highest possible figure. And you could certainly argue that if you do it often enough that people will pay more. But the reality is if you accept an offer that has one of those in it, you did get the top offer. It just might not have been as high as what it would have been if someone would have just arbitrarily picked a number. But at least you did get the highest possible price.
I would think that most people who are listening, most people that are listening know what an escalation clause is, but it's essentially just you add it to the contract to prevent from overshooting the mark. Let's say there's 4 offers total. One is 300, one's 325, one's 320. And what am I going to offer? well, you'd hate to be the guy to offer 350, right? That's really, in my opinion, really the only way to truly overpay for a home is to pay more, is for the gap that you between you and the next best offer to be more than like $3,000 or $5,000, right?
Sure.
That's how you truly overpay for real estate. It's nothing to do with list price. And so, yeah, the escalation clause is a way to prevent that. I feel like, I mean, listing agents, you have to listen to the listing agent, especially when they say, please no escalation clauses. And I think it's in everyone's best interest to do what the seller wants and do what the listing agent wants. At the same time, if I'm representing myself, let's say, so I can do whatever I want, you don't have to listen to those requests either.
Yeah.
You could just fire your escalation clause away, and if the rest of your terms are awesome, same with offer letters. People might say, please no offer letters. Like, well, you know what? Oops, here's an offer letter. What are you going to do?
Right. And I mean, from looking at it from someone, I'm not a buyer or a seller right now. If I look at it and I say, you want to make an escalation clause and you still offer 5,000 more than their highest and they got 5,000 more, it would be against their best interest to, I mean, they should accept that offer, and it would really be a disservice from their realtor if it wasn't presented just because it was an escalation clause, a format they don't like.
Well, it
it's
has
still
to be
the highest
presented.
offer, right? Yeah. So I say you just kind of do what you want, and you're right in that, like, okay, if you don't need to do it, then maybe you are putting yourself at a small disadvantage. If you tie the other person, you'll lose if you don't agree with the seller, right? But if you're right in there and you're higher and you're better in so many different ways, they're still going to take you.
Yeah. What do you think?
Yeah, historically, I mean, the last few years, we've been seeing it anywhere from 4% up to maybe 8% being the peak. 2021 was the highest that we had seen it, with a few months reporting like 10 to 14%, including escalation clauses. In 2021, it was still kind of like the new thing that we're starting to see. It was kind of one of those competitive, you could add it into the offer just to make your offer more appealing. And then we started to see a lot more listing agents and sellers saying, please don't include escalation clauses. And so people agreeing to not include those. But to your point, if that's what the seller wants to write, it has to be presented. And if it is the better offer, or if that's what the buyer wants to write, it has to be presented. And if the sellers decide that they want to accept that offer, that's up to them. Just because they say don't include it doesn't mean that you don't have to. I love the sneaking in of the buyer's offer, like the buyer's letter to the seller. I've seen a few really unique ones where it's not actually written by the buyer, but instead it's written from the perspective of like the buyer's dog, the buyer's cat, or something that's going to be in the buyer's home.
Okay.
And that way it removes from like the personal and like all the potential discrimination and everything, that all the reasons why we don't want to include the love letter, right? And I just thought that that's really interesting. There might be something there. And I'm wondering, like, from an investor perspective, is there something that can be done? Is there a letter that could be written that's compelling to the seller of the home that makes them more open and interested in working with an investor? I don't know.
I encourage everyone to write an offer letter, no matter what. I've heard other agents speak out against them. I've heard agents say, I'm not doing this because it contributes to racism. I think that's ridiculous.
It is ridiculous.
And if there are some racist bigots out there who are truly going to be like, what, a black person? I don't want, like, then they suck. That person sucks.
And they're doing it anyway. They're going to be profiling on so many different levels that, I mean, if they're super bigoted, super racist,
right?
Unless your name is Jan Smith and you happen to be an Asian, that they, you know what I mean? Like, they're gonna do it. So, like, I mean,
right. And so, but I can tell you, so many times, even this year, probably at least 3 times this year, I've heard from the listing agent, it was your offer letter that won. And it would just be such a disservice to your clients if you're not encouraging everyone to write an offer letter. And yeah, of course, even investors, maybe we're competing against some faceless corporation or some big fund. And so when someone like our friend Ryan, who Tim and I helped out a few months ago, he's buying a duplex and it's a picture of his awesome family of 5, it's just like a single family home, in my opinion.
We haven't done it often, but in a hotter market than we are in now, we wrote one on an investment property in South Minneapolis because the owner had purchased it we could tell she purchased it when she was single, and she had this, now she's married and she's had it for a long time, and she kind of, created this thing herself, and this was her baby. So my wife, who managed all our rental properties, wrote a letter saying how we wanted to own this property and have it and give it on to our kids and teach our kids how to invest. And we got the offer, and we know that we were not the highest price.
Yeah.
We were close, right? It solves thousands of dollars, not tens of thousands of dollars. I mean, it's the difference between them taking, $3,000 less because I want to sell it to this person or whatever.
It's also the chance for a buyer. Not only are you trying to pull at some emotional heartstrings, a picture of the dog by the Christmas tree, it's your opportunity to let the people know. It's not like I'm a bartender and my girlfriend sells feet pics on the internet and we've, this is your time to say, I'm an engineer with 3M, married to whatever. Like if you have a good resume, throw it in there, because sellers feel more comfortable accepting offers when they think you have a certainty of closing. And
Absolutely.
brag about yourself in the offer letter.
I don't know. I think include the feet pics in that. I think that goes a long way.
There's no doubt, like, certainty of close, and also they want to know that, like, they feel like you'll be, that you want to live in it is a huge thing for a lot of people. The thing that I've seen mentioned most often is if a swing set's mentioned in the offer letter and the person who's accepting the offer letter grew up in that house, it's a game over. They're getting it. I've been in closings where it's like, you got this house because I used to, play in that swing set.
So sweet.
Yeah.
One other tip that I'd recommend to sellers, if you don't have an agent who is willing to allow you to use an offer letter, that showing feedback form is the one form you can guarantee that the sellers are going to see with their eyeballs, right? Like, they're going to look at it. Yeah.
Okay, be more specific in your advice.
So you can't necessarily put an entire love letter or all the specifics or anything like that, but asking very specifically for your agent to put something in there that's going to spark that emotion towards your offer, because every seller, especially if it's a traditional residential seller, they're going to look at the feedback form. They want to know what you thought of that property. And sometimes you might want to say like, oh, it wasn't as great as the photos, like trying to get like a better deal. But if this is someone who has been in the home for a long time, has a lot of pride, it's a hard sale, whatever, loving, just being glowing and causing those positive emotions in that feedback form can go a long way. And if you can find ways to nod, like the sellers or the buyers are super excited about the swing set in the backyard, things like that, that might be something to consider.
Yeah, because then the seller's going to be like, oh, are these the swing set people? Mm-hmm. They want to know who they are.
Exactly.
Yep. And I would say, like, if there's anything that you can tell they put a lot of care in, like, for example, like a big flower garden, that would be a good thing to bring up because someone had to maintain that and care about it. It's kind of expensive and it's certainly optional. So if you are we want to take care of the flowers.
The flowers or the original woodwork, the arches in this property, they've just, whatever that like big thing is, that like anything you can point to that causes them to feel like a connection between them and you as a potential buyer can go a long way.
Something they appreciated about the house. Yeah. All right. What's next?
What's next?
Appraisal gap clauses.
What's an appraisal gap clause, Tim?
Appraisal gap clause is when the buyer agrees to pay for an appraisal that does not come to the purchase price. An example might be, if you're talking just like simple math, if you offer $200,000 for a house, but it appraises at 175, you'll cover up to X% of that difference or X dollar amount of the difference. It could be the full 25 or it could be capped. You might say we'll pay the first 10,000, meaning that we'll agree to pay 185 even if the house appraises for 175.
Because in a typical transaction with no appraisal gap clause, which is the majority of them, if the house appraises low, you as a buyer have a right to renegotiate. Either they're going to drop the price or you're going to walk away. At least that's, if you're a good negotiator, that's the kind of energy you're going to put out there when that happens.
Right.
How many times have we seen an appraisal come in low and it ends up just benefiting our client?
Almost always. Yeah.
Almost always.
And actually, I would say like it's very infrequent that it doesn't benefit them in some small level. For example, even if, let's say the seller will not pay 100%, like drop 100%, which is like them paying, right? So let's say it's a $25,000 gap and they won't drop it 25. They'll usually drop some, right? 10, 15, $1,000 and then maybe make the buyer come up with the rest. If there's closing costs negotiated, they might say, well, we'll do it, but now we're not paying $10,000 in closing costs, right? So effectively they've dropped $15,000, that kind of thing.
And no matter how strong a seller pretends to be, you as the buyer have all the leverage in this situation. Even if they went into multiple offers, now the appraisal is $25,000 low. Any good listing agent is going to coach their seller. Well, guess what? Let's just say we cancel and we're going to try our luck on the next person. I don't know if I think I've maybe only seen that happen once in my career where an appraisal made the deal fall apart and then they went to the next buyer and it was because it was FHA. Again, maybe unrightly so, but that was a case where it ended up appraising conventionally. But my point being, you as a buyer have all the leverage because the next appraiser is going to use the same comps and likely come to the same conclusion. So digging your heels in as a buyer and saying, I'm not paying another dollar for this house. And then as an agent being like, I'm so sorry, but my clients they just don't feel right about paying over an appraised value. It's going to work 80% of the time.
Well, and if you're a seller or you're a seller's agent and you're listening to this, the one thing you have to hear, this is from a lender, you couldn't have gotten $1 more from a finance property. Like that means that the appraiser is saying, wow, this seller did an awesome job. They got someone to agree to pay more than it was actually worth. The reality is it's only worth X, right? Which means you got the top value out of it, right? Because how many times have you seen where it's more frequent that we have a house appraised for more than the agreed upon price than less. True. Right? Which means that those people left money on the table. And maybe they even knowingly did it, right? But if you have to bring your price down because it won't appraise, well, you got top dollar, buddy. And you should feel your blessings. And agents don't communicate that very often, and I think they should. If they did, there'd be happier sellers.
What do you think, Alex?
So this one, when I look back to when I first started reporting the data, it's really interesting. For August of this year, we're at 12%, including an appraisal gap clause. Previously, it's been 8%, 8%. We did see it up to 20% in May of this year, which we do see that one kind of fluctuate as things get more competitive.
In spring markets.
In the spring market, exactly. Now, if we go back to 2022, when I first started tracking appraisal gap clauses, March of 2022, 44% of financed purchases included appraisal gap clauses. Those insights came from 176 files. So nearly the same amount of files being reported, right? The agent count was probably slightly lower. And I can tell you, there was a lot of people having to utilize those appraisal gap clauses. The appraisals were coming in low. They were coming in underneath the purchase price. And to think how many buyers went in underwater just upon purchasing their home is crazy. So that 44% in April of 2022, it was 36%. May, it was 37%. So it's been consistently underneath 20% all year. Historically, we generally see it right around like 7 to 8% is what I would call average for appraisal gap clauses, which feels a lot more comfortable than that, 30 to 40% that we saw in 2022.
One of those stats that is so heavily correlated to the strength of a seller's market. There's no ifs, ands, and buts about it. This is one of those stats to pay attention to.
Absolutely. And so a couple of thoughts here. First of all, when can you safely do this and just really not have a concern? If you are putting down so much that you're well above that like 20% threshold, then let's just say for argument's sake that you're putting 35% of the purchase price down. It would not affect your financing in the least if it came in 5% low, right? You'd still be putting 30% down. You're going to get an awesome rate. You're not going to pay mortgage insurance, all that stuff, right? So that would be one example of where, it really isn't, it doesn't hurt you enough. So you might as well do it if you like the house, right? The other, I guess, thing to consider is that the reason why they're not very common and why it really hurts a buyer is the down payment percentage doesn't start until the gap is covered. So for example, in my example, and I know that there's not many houses for 200, but let's just say for my example was correct and it appraised at 175 and you agreed to pay 185. Well, that first 10,000 doesn't count towards down payment. It's like evaporated. The down payment percentage doesn't start until 175 until you hit that appraised value. So it does force the buyer to bring a dollar for dollar difference, which is hard for a lot of buyers. And that's what's limiting it.
Yeah, it's a good agent perspective or a good lender perspective. As an agent, how I coach my clients, whether to add them or not, has a lot to do with the comps. Because I'll write offers at $300,000 list price. We're offering at $350,000. And I've got comps to back it up. And I say, hey guys, I mean, don't write a check your ass can't cash, right? Like worst case scenario, you need to have this money, but the odds of this home appraising low are just about this.
Yeah, and here's my data.
And here's my data. And these are the homes that the appraiser is going to use. You could get some really bad luck, but, and in general, appraisals are dumb, you know. Yeah. I think
you could get some bad closings, stuff like that happened right before, right?
I mean, most appraisals come in right at purchase price. So appraisals are not a true opinion of value. They're really just the bank needs to send a human in to make sure the house isn't falling over and to justify the general price.
Yeah, they're supposed to prevent some fraud. They're supposed to prevent fraud, right? They are there to prevent the bank. And inherently that means they do protect the buyer sometimes. I mean, we've been through it where sellers will reduce price and all that, right? And occasionally sometimes on a hot house I'll have agents call me sometimes and say, I think this one's unlikely to appraise, right? They're going in knowing it, making a strong offer, knowing that it's probably going to end up coming down and we're going to renegotiate. Doesn't happen a lot, but we see that.
Yeah, it is a strategy. And I mean, you even mentioned it in this conversation earlier when you were saying this was a home in Minneapolis and they were using comps up in like Brooklyn Park, Brooklyn Center. It matters, right? Yeah. And to your point, appraisals are good. Are they actual market value? No, they're there to protect the bank, but it does help protect the buyer. And it's someone's opinion, a professional opinion.
There's a range, an acceptable range. One thing I'd like to point out though, because this is super, super, super important. Every appraiser who does FHA homes also does conventional. They're the same people. There is no such thing. It's like an add-on, if you will, to be able to do FHA homes. It's not like you do FHA homes and you don't do conventional, right? You have to have a base level of being able to do conventional to be able to do FHA or VA. The type of loan has zero difference on the appraised value. People associate it because there are things with FHA loans that they look at, and sometimes they think that means the value is lower. It does not. It's the same people. They even use the same rules, right? There's the rules they call bracketing rules, and there's like they're supposed to do certain analysis for how much you give. Like if a house has a deck, or it has a garage versus no garage, it has, an extra room, right? There are formulas that they're supposed to use, and it still but those formulas are identical for a FHA and a conventional and a VA. The loan type does not matter at all to the value.
Really? Okay. So,
Yes.
So just to be clear, what you just described, there's brackets and there's values, but that is not.
You've heard of USPAP, right? That's like I don't even know what it stands for, but I just know USPAP is the governing rules body of appraisers.
Sure, but there's zero difference between an FHA and a conventional in any formula or any approach to the appraisal. That's what you're saying right now.
To the value, right? The difference would be like in the condition, but not to the value. So like, for example, FHA.
Condition affects value,
peeling
though.
paint. No, peeling paint. It doesn't, right?
Oh, sure.
I'm
so
saying
work orders.
Yes. Work orders. Yes, exactly. There is no difference to the value whatsoever. Meaning, and including like when someone appraises. So if an appraiser, sometimes we have them change the appraisal from an FHA appraisal to a VA appraisal. They never change the value, right? And they shouldn't, because the rules are the rules, and the way they come up to the value is different than how they inspect for, does it meet FHA's criteria? Because it's a separate inspection, right? And all they're trying to do is, it's a checkbox. Does it meet this criteria? Yes, it does. Okay, check, right? Those things don't affect value. They just affect whether there has to be a work order or not.
Well, you're the one, Alex would be the one to ask. Are you able to notice any trends with homes appraising low with certain loan types?
That's not an insight that we're actively tracking. It is one that I would like to track. It's harder with our back-end systems. We're kind of chained to the technology and what's available there.
Sure.
I will say, when I first got started, so 10 years ago, I saw a lot of people starting off as FHA. The appraisal comes in low, trying to switch over to conventional, and like it working, but I think that was them just trying to like sneak around the system. So I was kind of chuckling as you're saying, like, it's all the same calculation. It's just one person's opinion might vary over another's.
Well, I do see sometimes an appraiser will come in with a value that's like, let's say $3,000 off. And I always want to hit my head against the wall when I see that, because there's no way an appraiser can be accurate to $3,000 on an appraisal.
So dumb.
It's probably a percentage, right? Instead of a dollar figure. And so that percentage, I don't know what it is, but it's like, it's probably, if you want to, there's a way to probably figure this out, but it's probably somewhere around, they can get within 2 to 3% of the price, right? But like to say this house is worth 180, it's not worth 183. I know you agree to pay 183, but you need to bring the extra 3,000 to closing. Mm-hmm. That's ridiculous, right? But to say, okay, it's not worth 180. There's no way this thing's worth a penny over 170. They can do that, right? But to say 183 versus 180, it's like, no, that's not. They're not that good,
Well, and if we've all seen an FHA or VA appraisal come in low, and what you just described, and then they reorder conventional, and then it comes in okay. But I think the point being is you could order 3 conventional appraisals, and they might all come in at different numbers as well.
Sure, within that range. They should come in within a couple percent range. That's what I mean by 2 or 3%, something like that.
Yeah.
They could absolutely, especially you see this most, so where I can see it and where I could kind of like prove if I went to enough appraisals is where you see this most is in refinances. There is a range for every property, right? It's worth, well, even you, when you list it, you go, well, I think we're going to get 3.25, but we might get 310. And if things are really hot, we might get 340, right? It's a 3.25 house, but that's the range, the 310 to the 340. And any given buyer, depending on several factors, could end up anywhere in that range, right? 325 is the most common price, but it's not the only price.
Yeah.
If I had to guess, unfortunately, like I said, I don't have the ability to go in and track. If I had to guess, I would bet somewhere between 1 to 5% have low appraisals for the files that we're managing. It's not much in general. And that 5% is like a high estimate. If I really was like trying to narrow it down, I might say closer to like 1 to 3%. It's not often that we see it happen. And when it is, it's usually pretty small. And it's like, okay, we just got to negotiate back and forth here. It's not generally like a significant difference, thankfully. And it's not always been that case. But unfortunately for me, I'm going based off of more like qualitative conversations and that sort of stuff instead of having the actual hard insights. But it's not something that we're seeing too often.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense to me because I think I get roughly 2 a year unless we're in a really hot market. It always happens in an upward moving market. You'll get that. But just in a random market, it's just occasionally it'll just happen. Yeah. It just like for whatever reason.
Yeah. Even like this spring market, it didn't, like I've said, it didn't have the peaks and valleys. We didn't see a ton of appraisals this year come in low, whereas like 2022, 2021, we did. Yeah. We saw them a lot more.
And if you're going to see it in a random market, meaning not a hot market, it's probably the nicest house in the neighborhood where the people overdid it. And the buyers see that, like, hey, this is nicer than everything else we looked at. We want to pay for this. We want to get it. But it's like, yeah, but it still not worth that. Like, you are willing to pay that, but the market isn't willing to pay that price, right?
Cool. What's next, Alex?
The last one, we kind of talked about it in the beginning, is cancellations. Right now, we're seeing it included on 9% of purchase agreements canceling at any point during the transaction process, which is historically about where we end the month. Usually it's 8 to 9%. I've had a few years where we've been closer to 13% of purchase agreements 13% of purchase agreements canceling. That's, 80 to 90% of the time going to be during the inspection time frame. The other 10 or so percent of the time is going to be because financing fell through, the sale of buyer's property didn't happen, or any of the other contingencies just not happening, right? But the vast majority, when they cancel, it's during the inspection time frame. I do want to point out that Minnesota is very low for cancellations. That 8 to 9% is pretty unique across the country. I have a couple of friends who are TCs in other states like Florida, for instance, where right now they're having a 33% cancellation rate on average, which is much higher, much more significant. And it's nice that we don't have things like termites, hurricanes, etc., that we have to worry about. So when there's just a lot more peace of mind as a buyer, there's a lot less reasons to back out. You might have radon in the property, but you can get a mitigation system pretty quickly and easily. The sewer pipes, to your point earlier, might be something that come up, but that's easy to negotiate and something that's relatively easy to inspect if you opt for it. There's just not that many things that are going to come up with homes in Minnesota compared to homes in other states.
And folks are more confident in our market. Like right now, all those Florida cancellations are probably due to the fact that people are unsure. Oh my gosh, honey, what did we do? When they see prices settling.
Prices settling. And I can see that insurance would be a huge factor in that market because they might go, we can't find insurance that we can afford, or it throws us over on DTI or something like that. So definitely could see insurance being a factor in Florida over other states.
I have a theory as well that I think that cancellations are correlated with years of experience on the buyer's agent.
Yeah.
Because when I was a newer agent, I had a lot more cancellations. And these days I really just don't. I think part of that is as you work longer in this business, you work with more experienced home buyers who are less likely to cancel.
Yeah.
I think that a more experienced agent is going to filter out the bad homes from the get-go. We're going to even avoid going down this path.
Yes.
I'm going to see everything that's going to come up during inspection, and a brand new agent is going to get surprised during inspection a lot more. And then I think there's a confidence piece.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think that when I was brand new, especially representing investors, I thought it was my job to like find everything bad about a deal. Like, and that was like how I was helping my client.
Yeah.
And it's still my job to like point out all the facts. But
one of the facts is not every house is perfect, and this is a pretty damn good one.
Yeah.
Right. And I was under the impression that like I don't want to help people make these like horrible decisions. And then you get a couple of years under your belt and it's like, man, I didn't help anyone make any horrible decision, So it's my theory. What do you think?
No, it's hard to convince someone to buy a home that they don't feel comfortable buying, I'm sure there are a couple of realtors out there who have that ability, but I don't personally know any where it's like you can convince someone to buy a home that they really, really don't want. And I think you being mindful about the home inspector that you're selecting, if they choose to have a home inspection, goes a long way. Someone who can properly explain what they're looking at, what they're getting into, and not scare people away unnecessarily, just helping educate on that particular home. And the more homes you go into and the more that you're playing this game, the better you're going to get at it. Ultimately, it's not your job it's your job to like represent and like take care of your clients, but it's not your job to be a home inspector. When you get your real estate license, you don't automatically get your home inspection license. In fact, I don't even think that exists in Minnesota.
There's no such thing as a home inspector license for anyone, including agents, but especially agents.
Yeah. So you're just there providing your expertise and your insights and your opinion when it comes to that. And ultimately it's every buyer's decision if this is something that they feel comfortable with or not.
Yeah. And I'm not suggesting that like I've started to like talk people into doing things. I guess what I'm saying is
you're less likely to talk them out of it just because something comes up, right?
Right. Or just the kind of energy that the agents put out there. Oh, yeah. The agents are completely running the show vibes wise, right?
For sure.
And oh my gosh, this deal that closed today for a mutual client of ours was like turbulent with this other agent.
Yeah.
We finally met. When we think that this seller is like this like horrible person, or not horrible person, but difficult person. We finally met the seller. She's a sweet old lady. And then we're like, oh my gosh, it was the agent,
It almost always is the agent.
But going back to the cancellation piece, communication and understanding, like that Fairmount deal, that house that we almost flipped, my friend Brady and I, fell apart because the buyer's agent knew nothing about old houses. She at the end of that was like, I'm still not confident that this is a real bedroom. Like this agent could not confidently communicate to her client that what we were telling her was a bedroom was actually a bedroom. So these buyers, I could just imagine these poor buyers are thinking like, what's going on with this house? Our agent seems really confused. We're confused. We're just going to buy something else. And oh my gosh, was that frustrating because we would have made a lot of money on that sale. And if they would have come into us unrepresented and we could have just passed them off to a quality home inspector and I could have showed them like what a legal bedroom is, it probably would have gone through.
It's amazing how far just being competent can go in this industry and just showing any level of competence. And it's amazing how Agents will bring in so much emotion into the home buying and selling process.
I was
And
just
it's
gonna say
not
that.
your
Thank you.
home. You're not the one who's moving into this. You're not, and it's like, but I really love my clients, as you should. Awesome. Love that for you. Ultimately, your job is to represent them. Your opinion does not matter. I remember early on in my real estate career, this realtor was just talking about different like conversation points and things that we can do to better negotiate and take care of our clients and really represent them. And he was saying, instead of saying my buyer, say the buyer. All of a sudden it's no longer like get the boxing gloves on, me versus the other agent. It's just, this is what the buyer wants. What does the seller want to do in response? Yeah.
You getting heated, for example, doesn't make your buyer get a better deal or a better whatever, right? And like you said, like if people put their opinions on it, what sometimes happens is you're negating your buyer's opinion. I actually believe that advice from an agent is extremely valuable. I say this, and this might not be the exact right figure, but in a really hot market, Adam goes into hundreds of homes a month. It is not inconceivable at all that in a 3-month period he could go into 1,000 homes. It is possible, right? And probably not likely, but possible, right?
Sure,
If
hundreds
you're
for
representing
sure.
Hundreds, okay,
Yeah.
hundreds, okay. Well, let's say more than 100 a month in a hot market.
Oh yeah,
right?
yeah.
Okay, so 1,000 in a year. Anyway. Point is, he goes into lots of homes, so he has knowledge that you and I don't have, right? Just like you have more knowledge about transactions, he has more knowledge about homes, right? And I have more knowledge about loans and whatever, right? Well, going in and imparting that knowledge is super valuable, and most people don't realize like that. Like going on a showing with a good agent is awesome, right? But at the same time, you do need to know when to step back, and when are you making your bias your buyer's problem? And are you inserting, and the big thing you said is, are you inserting emotion into it? Because I find, and Adam and I are really good at this, but like when things get really hot, I'm thinking of the transaction when we worked with another really big agent for Kwame. Remember that transaction?
I do. Yeah.
It was a very complicated transaction. And there were a lot of ways that if someone would have gotten really heated in that, it would have fallen just apart. It was one of the harder deals for us to put together, but we stayed calm and we stayed problem solving and very confident, like, hey, I don't know if this is going to work, but if it is, here's how it's going to work. And here's what we're going to have to do, and just communicate it through. And that's where I see deals come together, and where I see them fall apart. It's like someone like digs their heels and says, I will absolutely not do this. Right. And it's like, well, you just made something that could be a super minor deal and fixed in 24 hours or less into such a big deal that your buyers are going to back out. And they loved this home. You should have stayed calm and said, here's how this could affect you. Here's how we can solve it. Do you want to continue? Yeah, we absolutely love this home. We don't care about that, right? But if you get all amped up about it, they're just gonna, this is such a big deal, we need to cancel.
Yeah.
Right.
This is maybe whatever unfair to say. But whatever, I'm going to say it. The agents who, not all of them, but tend to skew towards emotion and difficult is the agent who used to sell a lot of homes and now they don't. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, back me up. Like that person is just the freaking worst because they don't have, they only have the one pending transaction. So they're putting everything into this one. And then they have like the ego that comes with having sold 1,000 homes, but they don't necessarily have, I'm sure, because I've only been doing this for 6-7 years, that in previous markets, you've told me about this, Tim, agents butted heads a lot more, right?
They really
Pre-crash, I've heard that. And now it's like, no, we're generally pretty cool to each other because that's in our client's best interest. But you're giving me like maybe 1980s energy right now. What do you think?
1980s energy. Yeah, no, I think finding that realtor who prioritizes you, is great at what they do, excellent communicator, very level-headed, and also is busy enough that you are a priority to them or among their top priorities, but you're not their only priority. Like, you don't want someone who's like too free and too available, because to your point, that's when a lot of time, well, one, if they're hungry for a commission check, people just show up differently. You know, if you're making rent or making your mortgage depends on this, you're going to show up with a lot more emotion, just baseline, because you're already
It's your
emotional.
emotions, yeah.
Right. So finding someone who wants you as a client, is excited to work with you, is great at what they do, but their business is not going to make or break on whether or not you choose them as an agent, that would be a wise decision.
Yeah.
And yeah, we still have a lot of people in the industry who have been here for a long time, and I've sold 1,000 homes and I've been in real estate for 30 years. Awesome. Do you know that the industry has changed in like the last 5-10 years?
Yeah.
Like it's not what it was in the early 2000s or mid 2000s.
I think there's another attitude towards it, and we ran across this on Ryan's deal. The attitude is the agent comes in and like, I'm here like protecting my client and I'm going to like control the situation. And when they have that kind of vibe to them, you get these really weird requests where they're like, well, my seller will only do it if you do this, this, and this. Adam and I were having a conversation with the seller because I happened to be here recording a podcast when the seller's agent called, and I looked at him. I'm like, 0 chance the seller asked for that. They don't even know what that means. Yeah. And this is completely unnecessary, and you're making this harder, right? And that's where we see it. It's like you end up, if you start jumping through hoops that really only agents and lenders know about, unless the seller's an agent or a lender, they don't know unless the seller told them to know, right? Oh, you should care about this. Or they're just lying and they're doing it and the seller has no idea. They're just waiting for an offer.
Yeah, this husband, by the way, there's awesome husband and wife teams out there. And maybe even most of husband and wife teams are awesome. But there's something special about the husband and wife team that are both like insane. And Tim and I had one of those. This is the kind of agent who thought it was a good idea in a up-down, turn of the century Crocus Hill duplex to put brand new carpet in the vacant unit. Let's just carpet that sucker because that's what we do to sell houses, right? New carpet. So that's how good at their job they were. And yeah, man, this guy, Tom Jones is his name. He was freaking so brutal, inserting his own ego and analysis.
It was major ego the whole way, and we had to get lectured for, who knows, it felt like 20, 25 minutes of just lecturing. Yeah. And then finally me, like, no, that's not how it works. I've done thousands of these. We can do it a different way.
And sorry, I want to talk shit about Tom Jones for a little bit more.
Yeah. Let's do it. He was awful.
Yeah, he was so bad. So so this duplex, they're the listing agents, right? And who knows what they're doing to try to sell the home, but it's not selling. It's on there for months. I have showed this home to 4 different buyers because I'm actually trying to sell the house because I believe in it. It's a great asset. Dude, Crocus Hill, 400s, let's do it. They put this ugly carpet down. I finally send him an offer, and he sends me like a 5-paragraph response to the offer in the most colorful, flourishing, like it was poetic.
Like he was trying to be an English major or an attorney, but mostly an English major with a little bit of legalese in there.
He was showing off how many words he knew.
Yeah.
Picking this offer apart. And I'm just kind of like, can you present it to your client? And then anyways, we go back and forth for a week. We finally get it under contract. But I'm like, if this seller only knew how his agent was representing him, they would be horrified because it's like, dude, you're not an attorney. The goal is to sell my freaking house. And a lot of agents who weren't as motivated as me in that scenario would have been like, I don't know, these people are weird. Let's go look at this duplex instead.
Yeah,
that was a crazy situation.
He just made a big deal out of things that don't need to be a big deal. If we're gonna boil it down, it's like if you make a big deal out of something, whoever your buyer or your seller will make a big deal out of it. And if you like, oh, this is an issue, but it's overcomable for the right thing. Now it's like you're looking at a solution, right? And that's really just what you got to do.
I wish I brought popcorn for this conversation. I was like, do I have snacks? And I mean, that's why you as a real estate agent are, earning your value. You're willing to put up with those conversations and having to deal with people like that. And I don't know. I had my real estate license for a while. I showed one house one time and I was like, this is not for me. I like working with realtors, obviously. Like I love realtors, the entrepreneurial spirit and everything that goes into it. And I want to be able to say no to the ones that I don't like. Like if you've got an ego like that and you just need to like show me how big it is, like this is not gonna work. And so props to you for dealing with that kind of personality type. I roll.
Yeah, it's certainly and I don't try to act like my job is that hard because really compared to other things that you could be doing for a living, it's not. But yeah, eating SHIT on behalf of your client's best interest.
Yes.
Like, I'm not going to escalate this because it really just doesn't benefit my client, when like the feel good thing would be to cave
just
into
lash
that.
out at the agent. Yeah.
That's the hardest
Quit
thing
being
about
a
my
dick.
job. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, same. I find where I get like, the problem is for us is like, we have private data, and I'll have agents trying to pump me for things. It's like, the only way I can protect my client right now is not to say a damn thing. You know, you might think I'm a bad loan officer, you might whatever, but I just got to shut my mouth. And I know you want that appraisal ordered right now. I know you want this. I know you want that. And I just got to, okay.
It's interesting.
There's a reason, but I can't tell you the reason.
Yeah. It's so funny because when people call you and they start asking questions, oftentimes you can not answer that question. You can answer like a different question, and they usually won't recognize. It's rare. It's maybe, or at least in my experience, it's maybe like 10 to 15% of the time where they actually want that answer to that question. A lot of times they just want to be heard, and they want you to know, hey, I'm feeling really frustrated about this, and a rough, where are we at? But you don't have to get too specific. And just giving them like the bare minimum kind of confidence can go a long way. But
yeah, well, I think this is a good point, because we're done with all the
that's all the insights.
insights, right? So let's talk about like your job as a TC. What sort of, I mean, I think what you just explained was really good, but like, how do you keep deals together sometimes, or do you see any role in that? Like, how do you interact in the transaction that way?
That's a really great question. I'm sure we do more than I probably consider. I don't look at us as like we're going to keep the deal together kind of solution, but we do help bulletproof the transaction. Like, it's our goal to make sure we have all the proper documentation, everything is written correctly, all parties have the right documents, the right prices, everything. I'm certain that we do help keep deals together because we just are more on top of it than the average agent. The average agent is just focused on relationships, negotiations, things that they should be focused on.
Sure.
And oftentimes they're lacking attention to detail. And those pieces are very important when communicating with lenders, title, the other parties, etc. And so I'm certain that we do. It would be impossible to say how much we do. And
Sure.
I also don't think it's a significant amount. Really, what we're here to do is just like make things as smooth as possible for everyone in the transaction process. Ultimately, the first person we're trying to do that for is the agent who hires us. And then the next person is their client that they're representing or facilitating. And then everyone else is also considered. Like, I don't want to make it an absolute nightmare for a lender. If we're on the other side, so if we're working with the listing agent, we're still going to communicate with you as a lender, but it's not my job to make your life harder or send you an email every Friday asking for an update. I just want to make sure, like, if you haven't told me that the appraisal is ordered, I want to check in. Hey, did that get ordered? We haven't seen it come through on showing time yet. Like, the goal is to keep things, like, we don't want any surprises. We don't want any bumps. They're going to happen. How can we iron those out?
Them out? Yeah.
Exactly. And so that's where the transaction coordinator comes into play. You know, unfortunately, if you're an investor, I have had quite a few reach out over the years. I'm not a licensed realtor. I cannot assist you in the state of Minnesota. And that's true for most states. But if your agent is dropping the ball and you feel like things are a little bit sloppy, not to be like recommend an assistant, but they might just be at the point where they need some help, whether that's a virtual assistant, an executive assistant, a transaction coordinator, just someone to give them the peace of mind of like all the back end behind the scenes is taken care of so that they can go do what they do best.
I got a question.
Yeah.
Do you track if you're, especially if you're representing a seller, but maybe even as a buyer, do you track if there's agreed upon repairs and their status too, not just the appraisal?
That's where I'm kind of limited to like our tools and technology that we utilize. When there are negotiated repairs, we do ask for proof of the repairs being done. We ask for receipts, and we do want to share those with the buyer. So if we're on the listing side, we'll ask the seller. If we're on the buyer side, we'll ask the listing agent to provide a copy of those. But that's about as far as we go right now. I'm considering changing it, but that's where we're at right now.
Mm. And from my point of view, because not every agent is, experienced like Adam and stuff like that. We see a lot of like, again, the average transactions are like 3 a year, right? Mm-hmm. And there's some that just do a half a year. They don't have enough knowledge to know when they're selling their uncle's house, because they got the listing because they're related, that when there's a repair done, it has to be done far enough ahead of closing that either if it's written in the purchase agreement, the that the buyer's agent or realtor, buyer's lender is okay with the repairs and they were done properly, and if there was a permit needed, that it actually got pulled and that kind of stuff. So if you can add that to your process to just be like, hey, this is a required repair in the purchase agreement, it should be done, preferably 10 days prior to closing, but no less than 7. And here's what we're going to need.
Yeah.
Because we see them try to do it at last minute. We're actually the sellers are delaying a closing right now for that very reason, right? On a transaction that we're working.
Correct. Kind of. It's not that straightforward, but yeah.
But they didn't do the work, and someone needed to be on them, and not all agents are on them. Some agents feel bad. They don't want to bring it up to their clients often enough, which is silly, but that happens. And other ones just don't know that they need to be on the seller.
Realtors are so silly. Like, that's an agreed upon term, a part of the purchase agreement.
But you see it,
Bring
right?
it up, yeah.
How often you see like the sellers think, oh, I signed an agreement, I'm basically done, right? It happens pretty frequently.
It does, yeah. And I mean, the repairs are difficult. We don't see nearly as many repair items as what we saw back in like 2015, 2016. Things just changed in 2020. They just did. The way that we operated between 2015 and 2019, it's just been different since COVID happened, since interest rates went really low and then they went back up to normal, which feels really high, and home prices have changed. We just don't see things negotiated like what we did 10 years ago when it got started. And we do still see the repair lists. It's rare that we see it more than like 5 items. Occasionally we do.
Yeah.
But I feel like back in 2015, we would see like the 12, 15 line items and that sort of stuff. And it's not that anymore. And I think a lot of real estate agents and sellers are trying to go for instead of repairs, like, let me just drop the
closing costs. Yeah.
Yeah. We're seeing a lot more of that. Again, that's more of a qualitative thing that I'm saying than a quantitative, but like, we're seeing a lot more of that these days.
I prefer that from my point of view.
Yeah,
for sure.
It's easier. And also for the buyers, it's good peace of mind. You don't know how the sellers are going to make that repair. And if you can have confidence in like, who did the repair? Were they insured? Can you contact them if something goes wrong? And so I think there's a lot of benefits to going that route.
Mm-hmm.
Well, everyone should use a transaction coordinator, because if you're the new agent who Tim described, the person who barely sells any homes, then you need somebody making sure you're doing things correctly.
Yep.
And if you're selling a lot of homes, you need help. I guess the only person who wouldn't have a transaction coordinator is someone who has a full-time salaried licensed assistant.
Yeah.
I think there's like room in the market for almost like an in-betweener. I'd like to hear your take on this. Like, I'm not at the point where I want to hire someone who I have to pay like $75 a year to. And I think 75 is kind of that threshold where you get somebody decent.
Yeah.
But I do need more than what I'm getting from my TC, especially February through June. And I have a virtual assistant, but those aren't perfect either. I used to go to Shannon, who we talked about before we were rolling, my old TC, who's awesome. Like, hey man, can I pay you like double or even like triple and then have you like in my CRM doing other things? Is there an untapped market for that where you could, or maybe you already do it?
I'm kind of a whisper, talk, shout kind of girly. And right now that's a whisper thing for me, where I recognize that too. There is a need yes, there is a need for additional support like that. And no, there's no one who's currently filling that really, really well. I know for me, I like to work with agents who build mostly repeat referral-based businesses, and helping you create excellent relationships with your clients and staying in touch with them, even if they're closing with you a couple of times a year. Like, you still need to be purposeful and intentional with that relationship and making sure you're taking care of that relationship and it is not just a transactional thing. For our company, I'm considering a lot of things that, how do I help agents stay in touch with their clients and deepen those relationships so that regardless of what happens in the market, you're out relationshiping the newest technology that Zillow rolls out, or any of the new competitors, anyone who gets the eyeballs and the attention of the clients. And so that's where I'm doubling down. And things like CRM support, additional admin support, those are things they're on the horizon.
Okay. Are you doing anything currently relationship-wise? Are you helping with like a closing gift?
So right now, I'm actively working on increasing the amount of touches during the transaction process and after the transaction process. What is currently available, what we have been doing is throughout the transaction process, corresponding with your client, getting them utility information, making sure that they're having a good transaction experience. After the offer is accepted, or after closing, sending you closing anniversary reminders at the 1 month, 3 month, 6 month, 1 year mark. Right.
That's nice.
Because most realtors have a CRM. Is anyone using it? Almost not.
Very few.
Yes, almost no one.
Makes me feel better, actually. I figured they all were, but
But like that piece has been, I've gotten more feedback from our agents on that than almost anything else I've rolled out in this business, because you're checking your inbox every day. So when you get an email, hey, your clients have been in this home for 6 months, you might want to check in and see how they're doing. They actually listen to that because they're looking at that and not their CRM. And then sending the Alta to the client in January, we do that as well. I want more things like that. I want to continue that relationship and help you stay top of mind and build that relationship with that client. And so I don't think we're going to go the updating the CRM route, because again, none of you use it. It doesn't matter for the most part. But what can we build that you do use that would be meaningful for your clients? And so that's where I'm currently whispering. There should be some more things coming here early 2026.
Well, hey, Alex, we have taken a lot of your time. We've been talking to you for 2 hours,
Yeah.
which is really sweet. I just want to ask, our audience is mostly people who are interested in real estate investing in the Twin Cities. If your daughter or sister or somebody came to you and said, hey, I'm thinking about getting into real estate investing in the Twin Cities, you're uniquely qualified to answer that question. What do you have to say, or what sort of follow-up questions would you have for them?
I think, being very clear on what your goal is. What are you trying to achieve? What do you want your life to look like? Asking questions like that. I'm very much more focused on like the building the life that you want to live. And so we talked about, before this, do I have any real estate investments? And currently the answer is no. I have 4 young kids at home. I need sleep. I don't need the calls at midnight that the toilet is broken in one of my rental properties.
Those calls don't exist, but go on.
No,
Yeah,
but
they really don't.
no, but right now I'm choosing where to put my time, my dollars, my energy, my effort, and real estate investing is not one right now.
Yeah.
And there will probably come a time where that changes, right? So just being very clear on where you are today and where you want to go, and how does this fit into those goals? Like for me, if and when that day does come, it's probably going to be more on the commercial side of things rather than the residential side of things. So being mindful, being very clear about what you're trying to build.
Cool.
Very cool. Well, thank you, Alex. This has been really awesome.
Thanks, Alex.
Thanks, guys.
What a great episode, huh?
Yeah.
I'm actually in the, can I say this out loud? Yes, I can. I'm in the market for a new TC, and I might be hiring her. Any agent who's listening to this, by the way, this is her pricing today. She just shared with us. I want to give her a little bit of a plug. She's at $425 a file, but she's also writing offers, and she covers, what did she say? Like most of the business day all the way to 7 p.m. Monday through Friday.
Yep.
And then 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. on the weekends, she's writing offers, you guys. So again, any non-agent, that doesn't mean anything to you, but that's a really good deal.
Yeah. I would say mention you heard her on the show so she at least knows, and then we'll keep maybe getting some more insights and have her back on some other time.
Yeah, absolutely.
So she's a good Instagram follow too, just if you're curious about Twin Cities real estate in general. She's a good Instagram follow. She doesn't overpost, but she has really useful insights and posts.
Cool. I'm going to follow her on Instagram after this. I looked at an interesting deal yesterday.
Yeah.
With a friend of the show. I'm not going to broadcast any personal information right now, so I'll keep it generic. But a mutual friend of ours led me to a couple buildings that are owned by a church. Okay? And those 1970s, like, rectangular cube buildings, they're brick.
Okay, sure.
They're usually
one story.
They're usually one story, and then the basement is finished, right? So it's almost like you walk into a split level. You're either going to go up a half flight or down a half flight.
Sure, I know what you're talking about. Yep.
And then there's usually between 3 and 6 units per floor. So they probably run from 6 to 12 units. And when you look at the build year of these buildings, they're usually between 1973 and 1979. There's a very distinct type. So anyways, this church bought or built 3 of these buildings. Okay. One of them, you and I ended up selling years ago to a client.
Okay.
I want to say it was a 7 unit. The other 2 used to be 7 units, but then the church converted them, ripped out a bunch of the walls downstairs or upstairs and turned it into their community room or a adult education center.
Okay.
So the deal is buying on a single parcel these 2 kind of not even Frankenstein, these 2 modified, uniquely structured, modified 7-unit buildings.
Okay.
And I don't want to say the price. I don't want to say the location, but I'm super intrigued.
But you'll report back on it.
I'll report back.
Okay.
And I think the main question, because we need Tim's brain on this situation. So
well, we had talked about you taking me out for steak dinner at some point. So we need to.
Do I owe you a steak dinner for something?
Well, I don't know if you owe me because I don't know if I did what you needed me to do. But we started to talk about it, so maybe we'll go out for a steak dinner. I'll give you we'll talk through the deal.
Yeah, well, yeah, we need Nicole. Tim's plug for Tim's wife is a commercial lender, so she's gonna need to look at it because the question is. We think the plumbing for the old units is still all in the wall because why would it not be?
Yeah, you wouldn't rip it out. It would actually cost money to rip it out.
So the big question is, logistically, with the city and the zoning and such, what can we do? And then construction-wise, what can we do? And
can we get a construction loan to bring it back? Right? I mean, that is possible if the ARV works out and everything else.
Yeah, no, we're aware that construction loans exist. It's just what can we, what are the numbers on the construction itself? And then what will is the city going to make this a nightmare or not? You would hope.
Can you say what city it's in? I would imagine.
I'd rather not.
Okay. All right.
But it's not in Minneapolis or St. Paul.
Okay.
Although it's close and all these municipalities, you'll figure it out.
Yeah, I think I know actually.
All these municipalities should be motivated to promote housing density and more housing. And, we're coming to this municipality basically saying, hey, we're going to create 8 units and we're not making any more environmental footprint. They're right freaking here. But are they going to, is some of this plumbing that's in the wall from the 70s, is that not going to be up to code anymore? Yeah. So you could just imagine. But whatever, dude. I haven't been excited about a deal in a few months. Maybe that's not true. I was pretty excited about that that place by Nokomis that we rode on a few weeks ago.
Oh, and I think you were excited about the Summit Avenue house, right? Was it Summit? It was Summit, right?
Yeah, what am I get excited all the time. But I will say that there's a lot more meat on this bone than anything else I've looked at this year.
Nice.
So that's cool.
Well, I have been seeing more deals lately too. I think we've mentioned it many times, but when you're out there and you're doing things and you're active, you'll find them. And I think that's what's going on for both of us right now. I've noticed, I think it's a really nice market right now. It's not overly busy, right? It's not so busy that you're having problems getting offers accepted. I mean, there's a little competition, but I think it's pretty stable and solid right now. Yeah, I don't know if it'll continue through the winter like that, but it feels like it right now.
This is a great market to be in if you have a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old because it's I'm making money and yet I'm doing a lot of fun stuff with my kids.
Nice.
Kind of that sweet spot.
So just talking out loud real quick, the guys from Shuck were at one of our meetups last night, and we talked to them, and they mentioned possibly sponsoring some sort of a social in November or December.
Great idea.
And I liked the last one. I mean, we kind of resisted socials because we want to always give education, but I think sometimes the education is just simply being with other investors and talking.
Tim's talking about our meetup right now.
Yeah, our meetup, yeah. So I'd like to try to up that a little bit, maybe do 3 or 4 of those a year because I do think they're valuable. And if we see that they're no longer valuable, we can back off, right? I don't think it has to be a forever decision, but I think it'd be good to do something like that. We also have Todd Dexheimer coming up on the meetup in October.
Nice.
And right now that's scheduled for the first Tuesday of October. But Adam and I have agreed that we are going to be switching to the second week because there's a lot going on in the first week, and we find conflicts not only with our own personal lives. There's a couple holidays in there if you look close, and then there's just other meetups. So we haven't decided yet, but I know you don't memorize the date anyway. But just so you know, if you have memorized it, it's going to be changing. So just always stay up with meetup.
Yeah, more specifically, the MinRIA, am I pronouncing that correctly? Meetup is on the first Tuesday of the month, and I keep getting these messages.
There's at least one other one that is as well. So
I keep getting these messages like, "Hey, I'd love to come, but blah blah blah." So like, let's just change it. We're going to be the second Tuesday of the month, coming up after October.
Yeah, we're going to keep it Tuesday then.
But why not? Yeah,
Okay.
Let's not overcomplicate it.
Sure.
Well, cool. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Thanks again to Shook for sponsoring the episode. Remember, you can get a 20% discount by using a discount code at shookrentals.com. That's SHUK rentals.com. And our code is TCREI, Twin Cities Real Estate Investing 20. Cool. See you guys next week.
We need to thank Network Title too. Just they do an awesome job for us, and we've got a transaction right now, a great example of them just keeping everything together. There's a transaction where the seller is causing a problem, and our title company is making it easy on both Adam and I to keep the transaction smooth, which makes it easy for the buyer too. So if you're looking for a great company, consider Network Title. April Bryan at Network Title.
Cool. Sounds good, guys. See you later.
That's it for today's show. You can visit the Twin Cities Real Estate Investing.com website for show notes, tips, tricks, and other local real estate investing information. Adam and Tim would like to meet with you. To schedule a one-on-one meeting with either Adam or Tim, go to TwinCitiesRealEstateInvesting.com/schedule.